Hey guys, you are watching your anime world. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see what if Deku became allies with Luffy and Ryuko. Here is short summary. A fun story about three people, Izuku Midoriya, Monkey D, Luffy, and Ryuko Matoi, as they try and achieve their dreams. This story is a crossover between One Piece, My Hero Academia, and Kill la Kill. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. The sun was setting on Musudafu, Japan, and all seemed to be peaceful. People were driving home from work, and birds were flying through the air. But, to those who kept up with the dangerous world of piracy, an event of unforeseeable consequence was about to take place. Wealth, fame, and power. Gol D. Roger, the king of the pirates, had obtained this, and everything else the world had to offer, but now, he stood in between the pristine edges of two silver blades, forming an X to his chest, which were prepared to fly up and slice off his head. But, the infamous pirate only smiled at his precarious situation, ready to leave his final words, and inspire piracy all around the world. "You want my treasure?" the man began. "Well then you can have it. A little piece of everything in the world is waiting, but be warned, you'll have to search the entire world to find it." The moment his speech finished, Gol D. Roger's life was quickly cut short, but after such a speech, cheers erupted from the plaza. His speech marked the beginning of a time known as the Great Pirate Era. 22 years after the beginning of the Great Pirate Era, just another pirate by the name of Monkey D. Luffy begins his quest to find the One Piece, setting off from his hometown of Fuchsia Village to wherever his small dinghy could take him. Having just departed and beaten the local sea beast which was in the waters surrounding his village, Monkey D. Luffy put his foot up on the side of his boat and began to talk to himself. "First things first, I gotta find a crew," Luffy said to himself. "About 10 men should do. Oh, and I'll need a pirate flag." Unable to hold his anticipation inside of him, Luffy decided to express his excitement by jumping up into the air, forcing his arms and legs inwards, as he began to shout, "Look out world, 'cause you're looking at the man who'll be." As he continued his speech, Luffy spread his arms and legs out violently, the king of the pirates. Once Luffy landed, the tiny boat the future king stood on shook from the intensity of the aforementioned motion. "Oh, whoops, I don't wanna accidentally break this thing," Luffy noted. Gazing out onto the ocean, a vast expanse of sea awaited the boy, and he wondered just where he would go next. Luffy smiled at the thought, deciding to lie down, and attempt to even mildly calm the storm that was welling up inside him. "Oh man, I wonder just where I'm gonna end up." "Ah, yeah," Luffy said, thinking aloud, "I wonder how that one kid I met way back in the day is doing." Thinking back, Luffy recalled a time over 9 years ago, where after the piracy of red-haired Shanks had a great influence on him, Luffy's grandfather, Monkey D. Garp, sent Luffy to Musudafu, Japan, in the vain attempt to make Luffy into a suitable candidate to become a marine. Blue skies, green fields, and thick, lush forests were plentiful on Dawn Island, the very same island that Monkey D. Luffy had grown up on, and the very same island he'd shortly be leaving. "But Gramps, I don't wanna go over to Japan. I wanna stay here with Ace," Luffy shouted, attempting to loosen himself from his grandfather's grip via his gum-gum powers. His grandfather was presently dragging him outside of the forest and into Windmill Village, and didn't waver after Luffy's plea whatsoever. "You little scamp, I don't care what you want. I'm doing this because you keep babbling on about wanting to become a pirate," Garp argued. "So you're gonna get re-educated in Japan, no matter what you want." "Gah, but I don't wanna." Despite the young boy's cries, in time, he was forced to leave the peaceful island where he grew up. Also, in spite of his previous cries, the boy was captivated by the method of travel he and his grandfather took to get to Japan. "Whoa, this airplane is so cool," Luffy exclaimed, pressing his face against the window. "Yep, hard to believe how advanced technology has become," Garp calmly stated, picking his nose in the process. "It's unfortunate we can't use these things on the Grand Line. Well, why can't you, Gramps? Well, the Grand Line causes these types of machines to go haywire due to their island's unique magnetic field. Garp stated, that's why you'll have to use a good old-fashioned ship once you become a Marine. Instantaneously after Garp said this, Luffy confidently responded. You mean once I become a pirate? Why, you little. Enraged, Garp hit Luffy on the head. Due to Luffy's gum powers, his head expanded downwards and hit the floor of the airplane they were riding on, to the horror of the others who rode on the airplane. A short while later, Luffy and Garp arrived at Mustafu, Japan. Garp yawned, while Luffy was enamored by all the technological wonders and busy streets present within the city of Mustafu. Luffy, Garp began, you'll be getting picked up by a friend of mine. Oh, so are y'all gonna ride back home on one of those airplanes again? Maybe. Can I come with you? No way. Now scram, you little brat. Luffy looked back at his grandfather, who walked away from the boy. Suddenly, as if deciding on a whim, he launched himself into the air, heading to an unknown destination. Luffy simply stood there, alone outside of the airport. What to do? There are two things that you need to know, stated an unknown voice, instantly commanding the attention of a confused Luffy. Identifying the figure who the voice belonged to, Luffy saw that it was a man. He had black hair, trimmed in a way that made him look like a soldier, but contrasting such a serious appearance was a red mohawk on the top of his head, pointing stubbornly upwards. He wore an overly serious look on his face, a white lab coat, and a black shirt. He also has pants and shoes, but they aren't very relevant. 1. I'm only doing this because I owe your grandfather a big favor, he stated. 2. I don't babysit brats very often, so you're gonna follow my orders and listen closely. Luffy simply stood there, mostly confused. There was a brief silence between the two. Are you gonna say anything, kid? You talk funny, mister. Instantly enraged by the demeanor of Luffy, the unknown person had considered saying something back for a split second, but he then remembered that he was speaking to a child, and he calmed himself down. I can't believe that you're such a brat. What did you say? I said you're a brat. Now get a move on, I ain't got all day. The unknown person wasn't be interested in having an argument with a child, and Luffy, uninterested due to the lack of a reaction from said unknown person, decided to follow him. Not before turning back towards the airport one more time, however, contemplating if he could find a way to sneak back into an aircraft and ride back to Fuchsia Village. Since it was nighttime, the unknown person took Luffy to his apartment, as it was just about time for both of them to go to sleep. Unlocking the door, the unknown person began to speak. All right, brat, you can sleep on the couch, the bed's mine. Interrupting the man was the snores of Luffy, who had passed out the second that they had gotten to the apartment. The man squinted at the boy, clearly unable to process the fact that Luffy had fallen asleep right then and there. The man decided not to wake the boy, and put Luffy on his couch to sleep, as per his word. The man then decided to go to his own bed. Laying there, he thought to himself, man, what a weird kid. The next morning, the man awoke to a sort of smashing sound in his living room. Just what the hell is that noise? The man mumbled. Quickly getting up out of his noticeably clean bedroom, he exited out of his door, and after shutting it, he peered to the right. Once he did, he saw none other than Luffy in his living room. The boy was shouting, "Gum, pistol," before utilizing his rubber powers to attempt to hit a salt shaker, which was positioned on top of a stool in front of him, though so far, Luffy had only succeeded on hitting the countertop to the left, the fridge further back, and the wall to the right. What the hell are you doing? The man asked with only a hint of aggression. Oh, hey mister, Luffy responded. I was practicing my gum moves, since I gotta be strong if I wanna be a pirate. Garp really was right, you're dead set on being a pirate, huh? The man said, mildly intrigued. Yep. The man walked out of the hallway which housed his bedroom and bathroom. As he looked to the left, he found his kitchen mildly damaged, and straight ahead, he saw that his couch had been noticeably roughed up, but all in all, his apartment was mostly fine. The man breathed in a sigh of relief. Say mister, what's that thing up there? Luffy said, pointing towards the TV up on the wall. That's a TV, kid. A what? A television. It lets you see the news, shows, and other stuff. What are shows and other stuff? The red-haired man began to be sick of the straw-hatted boy's constant questions. There are two things that you need to know. Do you always say that? Now annoyed, the man then quickly snapped back, "All right, kid. You've gotta get ready for school, and I've gotta get ready for work. We'll be leaving in 15 minutes, so don't dawdle." "Where do you work, mister?" "Someplace with my sister and a few others." "Stop asking questions for now, kid, I'm tired." After the pair somewhat quickly got ready, Luffy basically just stood there doing nothing while the man picked up his slack. The man then drove Luffy to work in his car. As they passed by car after car, Luffy was bewildered by the act that was extremely simple to the man. "Whoa, this car thing is incredible," Luffy exclaimed. "Just how does it work, old guy?" "Kid, I'm not a mechanic." Luffy then curled his right hand into a fist, and smacked it onto his left palm, as if he were resting his fist on it. He had come to a conclusion. It must run on magic then. Eventually, the pair arrived at the school Luffy was to attend, and after Luffy got out of the car, the man began to speak. "There are two things that you need to know." The instant the older man began, Luffy's face quickly cringed. "1. You best be here by the time that school ends, 15:15 sharp." The man began, and 2. Don't make any trouble at school. I have important stuff to do, so I can't just be babysitting some brat all day. Luffy remained standing still, not saying anything. "You got that, kid?" "Got it. Good. Then go inside and learn a thing or two. I'll be here when you're done." The man drove off, and after he did so, Luffy then turned around, and absent-mindedly looked at the academy which would be housing him for an indefinite period of time. "Well, guess I gotta go in there." Despite his statement, Luffy continued to stand still, contemplating whether or not he actually wanted to go inside. Luffy's previously neutral face then turned into a frown, as he stated, "Do I really gotta go in there?" Hello there." An unknown voice said from behind Luffy, his already squeaky voice cracking at the end of his previous statement. I haven't seen you around before, are you new around here?" The boy who had confronted Luffy was even shorter than Luffy was, and was even younger as well. He possessed both dark green hair and green eyes, the latter of which were large and beady, and below them, he possessed freckles. He wore a celadon-colored shirt, with green shorts, white socks, and red shoes. "Oh, yeah, I just came here with my grandpa, 'cause he said I have to go to school." Luffy quickly responded. "Oh," the green-haired boy exclaimed, "then, you must be pretty nervous. What grade are you in?" The conversation paused momentarily, as Luffy had to count what grade he was in on his fingers. "Third grade, or something like that. Wow, you're 2 years older than me then, I'm in first grade." Suddenly, another voice interjected. "Hey, seems like someone's talking to that crappy Deku." The person who made that observation was a spiky blonde-haired student, with bright red, sharp eyes. He wore a blue shirt, red pants, and green shoes. "Good morning, Kachan," the boy named Deku nervously spouted, gaining the attention of Luffy, but only the contempt of the other boy. "Get out of the way, nerd." The so-called Kachan then passed by Deku, moving past him as though he were just a fly. Before Kachan was even out of range, Luffy then loudly stated, "That guy seems like a big jerk." He's actually anyways. "My name's Izuku Midoriya, what's yours?" the boy asked, smiling as he did so, clearly trying to ignore what just happened. Luffy then smiled back. "My name's Monkey D. Luffy, and I'm gonna be the king of the pirates." Izuku Midoriya was taken aback by this claim. "What? A pirate?" "Yep," Luffy said. "I wanna be a pirate just like Shanks, he's who I got this straw hat from." Luffy then pointed to his head. Izuku Midoriya was unsure what he should think, as he quickly muttered under his breath, shocked, "Whoa," to be able to say something like that. He paused, realizing he was speaking aloud, and then said, "Well, classes are about to start. You know where yours is?" "Nah, I never bothered checking." What? You better head to the principal's office to find it then. I'll take you there." "You really have the time to do that?" I'll be just fine. After the conversation with Izuku in the morning, Luffy was able to become fast friends with the boy, but after Izuku helped Luffy find where he was to go, the two departed for their respective classes. In class, Luffy almost instantaneously fell asleep due to a lack of interest in anything remotely educational, and well, the teacher's lack of excitement about their subject didn't help either. Later, during the first recess of the day, Luffy found an isolated space near the garbage, and began practicing his gum-gum moves. Izuku, who had been searching for Luffy, saw him training, as Luffy was finally able to land a hit on the garbage can he was aiming for. "What are you doing, monkey?" Luffy then took notice of Izuku, and turned towards him. "Oh, I'm practicing my gum-gum moves on this trash over here." Luffy then resumed his attention to the trash can, as he yet again shouted, "Gum-gum, pistol," but his next move missed again, ending his hot streak of 1. "Ah, dang it," Luffy muttered. Meanwhile, Izuku stood timidly in the corner. Luffy noticed this, and asked, "What's the matter? Gotta poop?" Oh, no, I don't." Izuku shut his eyes after saying such, and kept them held shut, as if afraid of seeing what was right in front of him. Izuku slowly opened his eyes, and afterwards asked, You said that you wanted to become the Pirate King, right?" Luffy quickly responded, saying, "Yep. It's a part of the promise I made with Shanks." Then, Izuku paused, not sure if he wanted to proceed. "Do you think that it's possible I could become a hero, even without any superpowers?" Luffy began to stare blankly at Izuku, which caused the latter of the two boys to panic. Well, say something," Izuku begged, flustered. "You're being dumb." Luffy, deciding that the matter at hand didn't require it fully, returned his attention to the garbage cans in front of him. "I can't say if you can or can't become a hero because you aren't one yet," Luffy began to say. "It's something you gotta try and do yourself." But I didn't have any powers when I was born either," Luffy noted, causing shock to enter Izuku's face. "But I was still able to get these powers because I ate the gum-gum fruit, and my brother's even stronger than me, without any powers either." But what's there to say about? Luffy flashed a wide smile at Izuku. "So long as you think you can do it, who else can prove you wrong?" After contemplating and realizing the true meaning behind Luffy's relatively simple words, tears began forming on Izuku Midoriya's face, but he quickly wiped them away, not wanting to seem like a crybaby in front of Luffy. "I'll try my best." Izuku was able to get out. Smiling faintly, Luffy continued to prepare an assault on the trash cans in front of him, as he then shouted out, "Gum-gum, pistol." Once more. Oh, your powers," Izuku noted, causing Luffy to pause once more. "They look pretty similar to those of a pro hero, Eel Boy." He once said in a video that he aimed by rushing out of school once the day ended. Just like any other kid, Luffy confidently shouted, "I'm free." Once he had left the building's walls, afterwards thinking aloud, "Now what was I supposed to do out here again?" Luffy stood still for a moment, as if almost on cue. His stomach rumbled. "I'm pretty hungry," Luffy, instantly responding to his stomach, then began to walk away from the school, wanting to search for food, but a voice made him stop dead in his tracks. "Now just where do you think you're going, kid?" Luffy then looked behind him, and saw the red mohawked man who was taking care of him for the time being. "Oh, hey mohawk guy. I was gonna go look around for some food. There are 2 things that you need." Luffy began to chant, "I want food. I want food," clapping his hands to the rhythm of his speech. The mohawk man sighed. Before beginning his speech, "I told you to wait here after school had ended." Luffy looked at the man, uninterrupted, as in an instant, Luffy's face changed. Luffy quickly bowed, and muttered under his breath a simple, "I'm sorry." "You don't look sorry," the man yelled back. It took the man and Luffy not very long to return home. Once they did, the man sighed after a long day of work, walking towards his couch and plopping himself on it. Luffy, unsure of just what to do in the odd place that was an apartment, followed suit, climbing up and sitting down on the couch. The man looked over at Luffy, yet the boy said nothing, forcing the man to begin the conversation himself. "You were asking what a TV was earlier, yeah?" Luffy looked blankly at the Mohawked man, and said, I did, which caused the Mohawked man to squint at Luffy, before responding. Why yeah, you did. Oh, cool, what's a TV then? Well, why don't I show you? I was just about to watch the news here now. Luffy smiled, as he responded, oh, sure. Though it was an odd set of circumstances that brought them together, it was the moments like this one that was able to bring both Luffy and the Mohawked man closer during their brief time together. Later in the evening, the Mohawked man decided to take out Luffy to play outside at the park. The park he took Luffy to wasn't a traditional one though, but one with various pieces of exercise equipment scattered throughout. The man intended for Luffy to play here while he worked out, but while the man did so, he noticed that Luffy seemingly was just continuing to attempt to use his gum pistol. After observing the boy casually for a while, the man decided to interject. You know kid, he began, regardless of whether or not you've got a quirk, spinning your arm around like that's not how you throw a punch. Yeah, and you think you know better, mister. Luffy shouted back, angered by his methods being questioned. Yeah, I think I do. The man replied calmly, as opposed to swinging your arms wildly like that, you want to. Across several more days, Izuku Midoriya and Luffy's caretaker aided the boy in strengthening the fundamentals behind his gum pistol, but on top of this, the bond between them was also strengthened. During their training, Izuku asked many questions about Luffy's way of life in the East Blue, including those about devil fruits and marines. Luffy answered many of Izuku's questions, and even asked some questions of his own about heroes, as well as some school stuff he didn't get, which Izuku tried to help with, despite being 2 grades below Luffy. Meanwhile, beyond just helping with Luffy's training, the Mohawk man showed Luffy the wonders of Japan, taking him to places like a shrine and noodle stand. On the only weekend Luffy spent in Japan, the man even took Luffy into work to meet his sister and business partners. One such business partner was Izuku Matoi, who noted that he had a daughter who was around 2 years younger than Luffy, and had a very similar personality to him. Thanks to the encyclopedic knowledge of Izuku Midoriya, as well as the teachings of the combat-experienced Mohawk man, Luffy was able to nearly perfect his gum pistol in just a week. That's 9 in a row, Luffy. Izuku excitedly shouted, as Luffy quickly set up the trash cans he was aiming at once more. Only one more hit, and we'll meet your goal. Luffy smirked, as he prepared his next move. He took a fighting stance, and while throwing his arm back and stretching it, as well as lifting his leg like a baseball pitcher, he shouted, Gum, and then, in an instant, he threw his leg down, and extended his arm forwards, finishing the title of his move with the line, pistol. In the blink of an eye, a powerful blow hit the trash can, causing it to recoil backwards, and have the contents of the bin spill out on the ground. 10. You did it, Luffy, Izuku noted, excited for his friend's accomplishment. Hey, couldn't have done it without you, your brain really helped out a ton. Luffy swiftly responded, plus, that old guy back home didn't hurt to have around either. Izuku was just glad that he could help his friend. Due to his victory, Luffy excitedly and rapidly tapped his feet on the ground, and then jumped up, saying, oh boy, Ace won't believe it when I show him just what I can do now. Ace? Who's Ace? Izuku asked inquisitively. Oh, did I never tell you about Ace? Luffy questioned. Well, he's the brother I mentioned earlier, and well. On this day, Luffy would tell Izuku about Ace, though he made sure to not talk about a certain boy who wore blue in the process, knowing that the story would probably be too sad for Izuku to hear. Later that day, when the man came to pick Luffy up, Luffy excitedly spouted to him about his new and improved aim. Yo, old man, you'll never believe it, I finally perfected my gum pistol. Oh yeah, the man responded, well, let's go to the park then. You'll have to show it to me. When they arrived at the park, Luffy showed the man his gum pistol, succeeding in hitting a stationary target 15 times in a row. Not bad at all, Luffy. The man said, but, you know your opponents aren't just gonna be stationary targets, especially at longer ranges, right? Luffy, excited by his progress, was angered by the man seemingly undermining it, as he yelled, oh come on old man. I can hit these targets now, ain't that good enough? Luffy. The man chuckled, As the beginning of his speech caused Luffy to shut his mouth temporarily, there are two things that you need to know. The same cringed face that Luffy made only days prior returned to Luffy's face when the man began. 1. You're the one who wants to become the king of the pirates, and that goal requires no less than excellence in combat. The man then continued, 2. Don't get me wrong. I am proud of your progress, but I'm just preparing you for what your next steps to improve are. Luffy's cringe face then evaporated, turning into one of excitement and joy. So then mister, does that mean you're on board with me becoming a pirate? Well, I mean, I still want you to become a marine, don't get me wrong. Even though Luffy had perfected the aim of his gum-gum pistol on stationary targets, the boy continued his training, intent on completely perfecting the technique as quickly as he could. However, not all was as peaceful as it seemed, as just a few days after Luffy began his new training, Izuku wouldn't show up at their traditional meeting spot. That's weird, Luffy said, thinking aloud, he's not the type to be late for no reason, where could he be? Curious, Luffy left behind the secret spot which held the memories of his and Izuku's journey to perfect the gum-gum pistol, for the last time. Going out into the courtyard, Luffy explored around the playground, eventually finding another hidden area which he didn't know about, and saw Izuku, together with that Kacchan, from earlier. So Deku, it seems you've been helping the third grader. Kacchan began, even though you know that he insulted me, right on his first day of school. Kacchan, Izuku mumbled. Don't try and play that card with me, Deku. We all know what you're trying to do, you quirkless, wannabe hero. Kacchan confidently spouted, with his entourage behind him, laughing. Now, here's the deal. You're gonna cut ties with that Crafid, and then, you're gonna bring him to me so I can beat him up. That's gonna be your only use. Damn Bakugo, you're crazy. One of his friends spouted behind him. Seeing this outside the alleyway, Luffy, more than anything, was focused on the tears of Izuku, knowing that they were the tears of someone with grit, yet, it was buried underneath a childlike fear. Oh okay, I'll do it. Izuku cried. Ha, didn't take much to convince you. Gotta wonder if you and that kid were ever even friends in the first place. Ha ha ha, Kacchan said through laughter. Now, gum, Luffy began, causing Kacchan to turn around, ready to question just who the hell would bother messing with him. Before he could, Luffy finished his attack with a shout, propelling his arm forwards as he shouted, pistol. Suddenly, a rubber arm propelled itself towards Kacchan, which he narrowly dodged, dropping Izuku in the process. Get your hands off my friend, Luffy shouted, as his arm retracted back to him, ready to strike again. Your friend, Kacchan got out through restrained laughter. This crappy Deku was just about ready to sell you out to me, and you still consider him a friend. Izuku looked down at the floor through tears, unready to accept the reality in front of him. Shut up, Luffy shouted, causing Izuku to look up in surprise. I don't care what you think, and I don't care what he said. I'm friends with him cause he's a good guy, and I know that he'd never go behind my back like that. The tears which had momentarily stopped then proceeded to continue to well up in Izuku's eyes, except this time, they were for a different reason. They weren't tears of sorrow, but rather, tears of joy for the fact that someone believed in him that much, Luffy. Suddenly, Kacchan's entourage rushed towards Luffy, featuring one boy with red, devil wings, and another who could extend his fingers. That's all the information Luffy's brain had time to process, as Luffy simultaneously hit them both with a twin pair of gum pistols from afar, knocking the pair out cold. Not bad, you took out the extras. Kacchan cheerfully stated, but, you'll have to do better than that against me. Kacchan ran towards Luffy, and as Luffy processed this, he then shouted out, gum, pistol. Utilizing the move, but Kacchan was able to dodge due to the predictability of the move. With Luffy's arm outstretched, Kacchan took the advantage. Getting up close, Kacchan attempted to punch Luffy, but Kacchan's punch sank right into Luffy due to his gum powers. Kacchan merely smirked at this, as he then yelled out, take this. As he unleashed a powerful explosion, causing Luffy to take damage and be hurled backwards. Luffy, Izuku yelled, as Kacchan turned back towards Izuku. It seems that friend of yours was all bark, and no bite, Deku. Kachan confidently said, smiling at the green-haired boy, who was lying, terrified, on the ground. Getting someone else to fight your fights for you, that's not very hero-like, is it? Shut up, you jerk. A voice calmly spoke from behind Kachan, as Kachan turned around, eyes wide. He realized that Luffy, despite being hurt from that last explosion, was still standing tall right behind him. It reminded Kachan of All Might. You're still standing. Kachan nervously said. Luffy ignored Kachan, as he began a speech that only he understood the true meaning of. You can punch me, blow me up, even spit on me for all I care, Luffy said, but, nobody, and I mean nobody. Luffy, pausing momentarily, readied yet another gum-gum pistol, as with determination, he shouted out, hurts my friends. Kachan smiled at this with a drop of sweat falling down his face. He was nervous. Well, no big deal. Kachan thought. I avoided that last punch he threw at me, so this one should be a piece of. But, when Kachan tried to move in order to de-doge Luffy's attack, he was unable to. Deku? Kachan questioned. Sorry Kachan. To Kachan's surprise, Izuku had grabbed him from behind in a full Nelson, leaving Kachan completely vulnerable to Luffy's gum-gum pistol. This attack hit Kachan square in the face, and it hit him hard, leaving a bruise on the boy's face. You worthless Deku! Kachan shouted, shoving Izuku back, as he rushed towards Luffy. Once he was free, I'll never back down. I'll always keep standing, that's what it means to be number one. Luffy, deciding not to comment, rushed towards Kachan himself. The boy readied his explosions, and in turn, Luffy readied his attack, shouting out, Gum Gum. Kachan was ready, but once Luffy reached a close-range position, he'd shock Kachan, yelling out, Bullet. Before Kachan could unleash an explosion which would have surely finished off Luffy, the surprise change of attack up from Luffy hit him square in the chest. As Kachan was recoiled backwards, the attack had less of a charge up than the Gum Gum pistol, and came at him faster than he expected. And due to that, Bakugo was now out cold. Luffy, Izuku said through tears, staring at the other boy, who offered a swift response. Don't let any jerks like that stop your dreams, no matter what. Izuku, who had never had someone fight for him before, continued having his tears flow, but as quick as he could, he wiped them away. After all, this wasn't an occasion he should be crying at, because he had found his hero. Of course, despite the heroic nature of the 8-year-old Luffy beating up the 6-year-old Kachan, the school which Luffy attended saw the incident at face value, and even if they didn't, they would have surely expelled Luffy regardless. Returning home after getting expelled inside the Mohawk man's car, the man asked Luffy. So, what was the reason that you got into that fight? My friend was getting beat up by that Kachan guy, and telling him that he could never achieve his dreams and become a hero, so I beat him up. Luffy asserted. Due to Luffy's reasoning, the Mohawk man smiled. Well, even if it was inevitable that you'd get kicked out of school, I'm at least glad you went out like you did, the man stated. What's that supposed to mean? Luffy snapped back in an instant. Shortly after collecting the minimal belongings Luffy possessed, the man and Luffy both arrived at the airport, as Luffy saw his grandfather waiting for him. Gramps, Luffy confidently said, rushing towards him with his arms spread out, as his grandfather returned the favor. The pair ran at each other, and once Garp was in range of Luffy, he smacked Luffy clean in the head. You little brat, it hasn't even been 2 weeks, and you already got yourself expelled. Sorry Gramps, but it wasn't for me. Garp sighed, all right brat, get to the plane. Luffy, who had previously been hiding it, was no longer able to hold back his excitement, shouting, yay. There are 2 things you need to know. Luffy, now realizing that he was to be leaving the man behind, looked behind him. First, we never introduced ourselves. My name is Sumugu Kanagas, a scientist working with life fibers, and you are. Luffy smiled back, and asserted, Monkey D. Luffy, and I'm the guy who's gonna be king of the pirates. You little, Garp said, raring to give Luffy another beating before being stopped by Kanagas putting a hand on his shoulder. Second, the next time we meet, it doesn't matter what you are, whether you're a pirate, a marine, hell, even a hero, you better be the damn best of your trade. Luffy's smile grew even wider, his eyes automatically shutting in the process. Of course, old guy. Kanagas returned the smile. After a brief pause, Luffy opened his eyes, as his smile parted slightly enough to allow him to do so. Anyways, I'll see you sometime later. Luffy then ran backwards into the airport, leaving both Kanagas and Garp behind. So, you see it too, Kanagas. Garp stated. Yep, that boy's gonna make something of himself someday. You should have seen just how determined he was to master that move, the gum pistol, I think it was. Biwahaha, that's my boy. Garp laughed, and then continued, to be fair to Luffy, I didn't think school'd be the answer to his streak of piracy. I mean, I remember that I myself flunked out of the first school I attended in 3 days. Kanagas only smiled, and there was a brief silence between the two. They had said all there was to be said. Well, Kanagas, I don't know when I'll see you again, but I'll have to repay you for taking care of Luffy. No worries, he was a good kid. Ha, that's the first time I've heard that. Garp then turned around, ready to leave, but he was stopped one final time by Kanagas. Garp, Kanagas began, as Garp turned around, let's go out for drinks sometime. Garp smiled, of course. My treat. The old man then walked into the airport, noticing quickly that Luffy hadn't stayed put, and had rushed off somewhere. Kanagas, in the meantime, only smiled. Oh yeah, the lab. Kanagas reminded himself, I should probably get going there. After all, we're only a few weeks away from finishing the prototype for the Kamui. We don't have a second to waste. Back in the present, Luffy, after reminiscing over a much less detailed version of the tale that has just been told, then said to himself. Oh yeah, there was that old geezer too. I'll have to find my way back over to Japan and meet him after I become king of the pirates too. Luffy said this as though it was something completely casual, but then continued, I wonder how his old lab partners are doing. The boy continued to sail onwards regardless, relaxing as he did so. Contrary to his expectations, he'd be returning to Japan sooner rather than later, but for now, his journey was just beginning. Approximately 6 years before Monkey D. Luffy set out on his voyage, a meeting occurred between two figures of indescribable power. She's taking her time. A young teen, with blue hair and hands all around him, remarked. Now Tamura, be patient. A man with white hair and pale skin responded, his tone making it clear that he was the boy's superior. My apologies for keeping you boys waiting, a female voice coldly stated. The previously dark room instantaneously became illuminated by a rainbow glow, as a woman with white hair emerged. She possessed maroon eyes, a tight-fitting, yet revealing outfit, and a presence that could only be noted as terrifying, so much so that the boy named Tamura could barely stay awake in her presence. It is of no consequence, Ryuko Ryuko, the white-haired man stated, maintaining a perfect poker face despite the immense pressure he felt emanating from the woman. You know my name. Well, don't be a stranger, tell me yours. The Karyuan ordered, her cool, confident voice filling the room. If you wish to call me something, you may call me all for one. Ah, that's no fun. Ryuko Ryuko peered around the room, finding that a chair was prepared and waiting for her. She walked over to it, but didn't sit on it, preferring to stay standing. You called me to this meeting, the Karyuan noted, so why don't you tell me just what you want? All for one looked over at Tamura Shigaraki, who was staring at Ryuko Ryuko with bloodlust. Her tone, it was commanding, and powerful, being one that not even his master could match, and that angered Tamura Shigaraki. Nobody was able to speak to his master that way, not without a swift death awaiting them. Calm down, Tamura, all for one stated, noting Tamura's bloodlust, as the boy hesitantly followed his master's order. All for one then continued, I called you here today to offer you a proposition. Oh, I couldn't have guessed, Ryuko stated, sarcastically. I've heard about your work with life fibers, and about their abilities to strengthen one's own power. All for one began, as Ryuko's face didn't change in the slightest, and while I don't know what your plan is, I would like to offer a partnership between us. In this partnership, what will you give me, all for one? Ryuko questioned. Power. While you possess life fibers, I possess many quirks which I believe that you could use well. Ryuko Ryuan's face still hadn't changed, but there was a brief pause which, in an instant, changed the entire dynamic of the conversation from one of passiveness to one of slight aggression. And, what is your ambition? While not significant, there was a brief pause from All for One. In a microsecond, the man considered ways that he could change the tone of this conversation into one of which gave him favor, yet unfortunately, he saw no outcomes of that nature. Attempting to keep control nonetheless, he simply veered to the outcome which would allow him to escape the confrontation with his life. Simple. While that fool All Might wants to become a symbol of peace, I wish to become a symbol of fear. In All for One's view, the face of the Karyuan conglomerate considered the offer momentarily, but after said moment, her smile grew larger than ever before. You say that you wish to become a symbol of fear. Ryuko Ryuan repeated, how human of you. While Tamura Shigaraki's rage only grew, All for One continued to stay calm, as if he had expected this outcome from the moment that Ryuko Ryuan had walked into the room. She continued, I see no reason why I should follow behind such a trivial goal from a fool such as yourself, who acts on no more than the whims that a child would. Tamura Shigaraki had listened long enough by this point, as his rage overflowed. Shigaraki rushed towards Ryuko Ryuan and attempted to attack her with his decay quirk, but before he could even reach her, he was shoved back by a wave of some sort of energy and was knocked out. Despite this, All for One remained neutral. Point in case, Ryuko Ryuan commented. I understand your argument, All for One stated, putting a hand over his face, but do not underestimate the power I could provide. I do not require the powers of a mere human such as yourself. Ryuko Ryuan asserted, the power of the life fibers are all that I need. All for One ceased to argue past this point, as he realized that there was no point to such a task. Remaining on the offensive, Ryuko Ryuan now sought to fulfill her own means. Though of course, if you were to join me, and submit your will to the life fibers, maybe I'll reconsider. Ryuko Ryuan stated with purpose, in a tone that All for One was not unfamiliar to using himself. You talk as though the life fibers are alive. Who says they aren't? Catching on to just what Ryuko Ryuan was implying, just what her ambition was, All for One realized that a partnership with her was impossible. Your ambition is not befitting for one such as myself, All for One asserted, with the very same confidence that Ryuko Ryuan had earlier. My humanity, my logic, or lack thereof, is the very reason I seek the goals I do. There is nothing wrong with seeking an illogical purpose, for that is the very nature of those who will achieve greatness. Ryuko Ryuan looked at All for One with such an intensity that she might have been planning on burning a hole within him right then and there, but on the other side of the room, All for One simply returned the same glare. This alliance was never going to work out, Ryuko Ryuan stated nonchalantly, but at the very least, I can respect a man like you. As can I you. All for One replied without a hint of honesty, just don't be surprised when your ambition ends up overshadowed by my own. A novel concept, but I'm afraid your ambition is far too trivial to overshadow my own. While saying this, Ryuko Ryuan got up from behind her seat, and made her way towards the door, leaving silently. Once she did, Tamura Shigaraki was able to be resuscitated. He breathed heavily, having not felt such powerlessness in a long time. Master, I want her dead. All for One looked at Tamura Shigaraki with a smirk. Tamura's bloodlust pleased him, which is why it was such a shame to him that fulfilling Tamura's desire was implausible. Now Tamura, Mistress Ryuko is powerful, perhaps even more powerful than I. All for One stated calmly, but worry not Tamura, because I am sure that one day, you will become a symbol even more powerful than her, for you are to be the symbol of fear. About a year after All for One's confrontation with Ryuko Ryuan, a student of an unimportant elementary school was suspended from it indefinitely for getting into too many fights. This wasn't the first time that this event had occurred, as she found little value in staying at school. Her only true goal was to find just who killed her father, who had died only a few years ago. Despite not having any parents to speak of, the girl named Ryuko Matoi had a place she could call home, and that was the burnt and ruined residence her father previously owned. From her back, she took out a case that looked as though it belonged to a guitar, but instead, She pulled out a blade, which looked different from any other, for it was half of the scissor blade which had been used to murder her father. "Dad, I'll find your killer someday," Ryuko muttered with solemn confidence, a pledge she made on her scissor blade. The house she was currently in was located in the middle of nowhere. It would have taken her hours to find any civilization if she were to try, such as her ex-elementary school, and the same was true for the reverse. Nonetheless, a dark figure who had sought out Matoi was able to find her with exceptional ease. The figure was careful not to make so much as a singular stray footstep, but, after several hundred potentially audible steps, one was just loud enough for Ryuko to notice. As fast as she could, she pulled out her scissor blade from behind her, ready to brawl. "Hey, show yourself," Ryuko shouted with an unwarranted sense of confidence that she heard a singular footstep. After Ryuko said this, an uncomfortable silence filled the air. Was I imagining it? Ryuko thought, questioning herself. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps resumed. The faint sound was present just outside of the door to the residence, as Ryuko, unaware of what was outside, prepared herself for the worst, and the worst it would be. The door faintly creaked open, as a man who appeared young, possessing white hair despite this, revealed himself. Who the hell are you?" Ryuko questioned. "Just a passerby, who happened to hear about your situation," the white-haired man claimed, without a hint of emotion seeping through into his face. Ryuko tightened her body on impulse. She was on her guard. "Why are you here?" Ryuko again questioned the white-haired man, even though the situation was one that no honest answers would be given in, but then again, she couldn't have known that. "Well, when I heard about your situation, it nearly brought me to tears. A girl, lashing out at the world for taking the life of her dear father. Frankly, I couldn't believe such a cruel story was reality," the white-haired man said, with a tone to his voice that Ryuko felt was off. "So, I'd like to give you an opportunity. Come with me, and I can bring you salvation." Ryuko considered the man's words, and with childlike optimism, took them at face value. Ryuko was young, and to a degree, desperate, after all. Despite her optimism, Ryuko decided to question the man's words further. "Why should I trust you?" Ryuko asked, with small, yet noticeable fluctuation to her voice that wasn't present before. "Because you have no one else." The man delivered his last line in the perfect way, so that it didn't come off as hurtful, but instead, came off as though he were simply stating the obvious, and offering the girl a path forward. Then, Ryuko stopped briefly, but decided to follow through. "Do you think you could help me find out just who killed my dad?" The man smirked, for with this, he knew he had won. "Of course, I think I know just where to start." The man then extended his hand. "They call me All for One. What do they call you, girl?" Ryuko, loosening the grip on her scissor blade in her right hand, reached out for All for One's hand with her left. Ryuko's voice trailed off, unable to finish the rest of the statement, as her hand wavered, just like she herself did. All for One, calculating his next move, then quickly realized that he had no time left. "He's come," All for One noted. A moment later, soaring through the skies, he did. "Worry not, brave little girl," an unknown voice confidently asserted, "for I am here." Landing right in front of All for One was the exact opposite of the villain. Shocked by the sudden appearance of the man, Ryuko quickly questioned the situation. "Who are you?" she quickly asked. "Japan's #1 hero, Miss All Might," the hero confidently said. "This guy here is bad news. Get away from the scene, and find a safe place to hide." "But this is my home," Ryuko noted. "Don't worry, your home won't be harmed in this scuffle, not one bit." With the confidence that All Might exuded, Ryuko was moved. The feeling that All Might gave off, it was different from All for One. There was no ulterior motive to his words, no forceful promise she had to keep up in order to survive. The only thing All Might asked of her was to stay safe. At that moment, Ryuko realized that she was in the presence of a real badass. "Why you really won't?" Ryuko questioned. "Wouldn't dream of it," All Might confidently replied, tilting his head back to look at Ryuko. Ryuko recalled the hero society that was pushed so much in Japan, and how All Might was hailed as the greatest hero by her classmates. She grew to dislike people like All Might, who seemed to always have it all, and be able to smile in every situation. Upon seeing All Might's smile, however, she felt a wave of comfort come over her, and that's when she realized it. That smile, Ryuko thought, it's so warm. Responding to All Might's earlier request, Ryuko backed up, and left the Matoi residence behind. She decided that she should head back to Japan, and try to contact any heroes that she could, inspired by All Might to do so. Oh, the all-powerful All Might, getting in the way of an elderly gentleman, trying to aid a little girl. All for One said, mocking All Might, that's not very nice. Don't play coy, All for One. All Might responded, we both know the only reason you're here is to try and get your hands on the life fiber research from the late Izuku Matoi. Oh, so you found me out now. All for One said, yes, while quirks are the most highly valued abilities in modern society, I take interest in the commodities which are undervalued by you heroes. Utilizing life fibers are just a means to an end. Well, villain, you'll never get your hands on them, not while I'm around anyways. All Might responded, and All for One found humor in his assertion. Oh, All for One said, we'll see about that, hero. Utilizing several quirks, All for One prepared himself, and rushed himself towards All Might. The latter prepared to counter, but All for One had a counter for that counter, as he used a warp quirk in order to teleport. Behind me, All Might thought, unprepared. The villain's leg extended forwards, All for One landed a solid kick to the back of All Might's neck, successfully landing the first attack of this fight. All for One's attack didn't go unpunished, however, as while All for One was suspended in midair, All Might grabbed All for One's extended leg with his left hand. He wasn't knocked back by that. All for One questioned. Texas, smash, All Might shouted, clocking his right fist back and releasing it. With a powerful blow, All Might landed a firm hit on All for One's face. Due to its impact, All for One flew a fair bit backwards, before stopping himself in place with a levitation quirk. An instant after All for One did this, All Might sped towards All for One, stopping several meters in front of him. All for One dusted himself off, and then commented on the situation. Though I landed the first blow, it appears as though you found a way to take the advantage. All for One said, as his previously neutral face turned into a smirk, let's hope that you're more of a challenge than your predecessor, Nana Shimura. This statement enraged All Might, as per the plan of All for One. Don't you dare say her name, All Might shouted, as he blasted himself towards All for One with his full power. All for One quickly used one of his quirks, Air Cannon, to shoot a blast of pressurized air at All Might. But to the former's surprise, All Might was going so fast that such an attack didn't affect him, causing All Might to be able to go straight through the blast. It's gonna take a lot more than a bit of hot air to stop me. All Might shouted, now, Detroit, smash. Unleashing his attack, he hoped to damage All for One, but All for One blocked his attack via a combination of various defense-oriented quirks on his left arm, stopping All Might in his tracks. All for One then utilized various attack-oriented quirks on his right arm to attack All Might with a swift punch right back, causing All Might to fly back due to the severity of the blow. All for One capitalized on this by utilizing several air cannons in order to damage All Might while he was flying backwards. All Might had seen these, however, and he quickly utilized his insane strength to jump in midair and dodge even the first air cannon, and with his continuous midair jumps, he allowed himself to practically fly and dodge the rest. Using said ability, All Might flew back towards All for One. The villain quickly flew upwards by jumping and then using his levitation quirk, matching All Might's height. After doing so, he then used a telekinesis quirk to take a large chunk of mountain and threw it towards All Might, who realized that the chunk wasn't meant to damage him. Beginning to flip in the air, All Might built up strength, getting above the large rock and releasing his strength with a California smash, the impact of which broke the piece of a nearby mountain into 1,000 tiny pieces, all of which flew away from the Matoi residence. Your weakness as a hero couldn't have been more obvious. All for One commented, you can't put aside sentiment because it's not just your duty to save people, but keep them secure and complacent as well. A person like you, could never understand. All Might shouted back at All For One, who kept his smirk that he had maintained throughout the fight. It was fun to see All Might suffer. All For One suddenly let out a barrage of air cannons, all of which were aimed at the Matoi residence, but All Might repeated what he said earlier. "I already told you." A bit of hot air, All Might began, as he charged up another smash attack, rotating his arms to create a miniature tornado to stop the air pressure waves released by All For One's air cannon quirk. "Isn't going to stop me." Nebraska. Smash. Unleashing the tornado, the blow did more than just stop all the air pressure waves that All For One had blew towards him, but also, the attack headed towards All For One at a rapid speed, but All For One expected this, as he created a warp gate to redirect All Might's blow to straight to the front of the Matoi residence. All Might noticed the portal which All For One had created. In order to keep his promise, All Might quickly jumped in front of it, stopping his own blow from destroying the residence. The consequence of this was that All Might took massive damage to his right side in the process. Both members of the fight were injured. This fight, even though it had just started, was clearly taking a toll on both of them due to their incredible power and comparably lower defenses. "What will you do, All Might? In order to damage me, you must first damage the residents you're trying to protect." Without warning, All Might interrupted All For One, yelling out, "New Hampshire, smash!" By using an ultra-powerful punch on the ground behind him, All Might sent himself speeding towards All For One, hitting the villain with his back, as both All Might and All For One were sent flying far away from the Matoi residence and out to sea. There, an artificial island which was yet to finish construction was waiting for them to continue their battle. Taking advantage of the scenario, All For One attempted to use his rivet stab quirk to damage All Might's back while he was still pressed up against him due to his last attack, but before All For One's red and black tendrils could reach All Might, the hero propelled himself forwards and turned around in midair, preparing his own next move. Detroit. Smash. All Might's quick attack at All For One knocked the villain downwards and onto the artificial island below. Flying downwards, All For One remained emotionless, to the degree that it seemed like he was almost trying to over-exaggerate such an emotion. Once All For One reached the island, a large impact occurred, causing a shockwave which damaged construction around the island, and caused a dust cloud which obscured even All For One's own vision. Everything was going perfectly according to plan. At a speed so fast that it seemed as though he was always there, All Might arrived at the ground level, prepared to attack All For One, even while he was down. Florida. All Might began, charging up his punch in an exaggerated manner above himself, ready to strike All For One, who was right below him. Smash. In that instant, All For One's previously emotionless face, bruised and bloodied as it was, broke into a smile. All Might's Florida smash, which was previously aimed at All For One, was now directly in the right side of his body. "You saved your best punch for last, All Might." All For One confidently guessed, injured and speaking somewhat slowly. "You got angry, you got sloppy, but at the very least, you didn't get any weaker." All Might recoiled back slightly, wheezing due to the strength of his own punches. All For One, on the other hand, was able to get up just fine due to his catalog of quirks, even though by all means, he was even more damaged than All Might was. Taking advantage of All Might's weakened state, All For One utilized his rivet stab quirk once more, as he stabbed the very same area that All Might had punched himself. But that wasn't all, as every attack All For One had launched within this fight was targeted at the same area of All Might's body, also that he could barely move anymore. While All Might screamed out in pain, All For One only smirked, and began to laugh. How does it feel to be this powerless? There was no snappy comeback for All Might to give as he coughed up blood, for he knew that the only good that could come out of talking with All For One would be yet another mistake, one which he knew he had to avoid. All For One then took out the tendrils from All Might's side, and then jabbed him with them again, and again, and again, and again, until he guaranteed that All Might would no longer be able to move. Once All For One did so, and he took out his tendrils from All Might one final time, and the hero instantly fell to the ground, the wound in his side extremely deep and bloody. All For One didn't press his luck and go further, however, because he never had any intentions of winning this fight, not while All Might was in a stable condition, anyhow. "It's been fun, All Might," stated All For One, beginning to levitate upwards, but I have other projects to work on now. Don't strain yourself, that injury will only get worse the more you do. All for One then began to leave, but All Might, even though he was injured to the degree that he may never fight again if he fought here, he still got up once more. No, All Might thought to himself, if I give up here, after all this time chasing All for One, taking down his allies. All Might stopped momentarily, realizing just what he was thinking. No, that's not it, All Might continued to think, it's not about the effort it took to get here, it's about the people he's tortured and killed, the people he will make suffer if I let him go. I'm the symbol of peace, and I won't let such a title be only for show. All Might then charged up all of the power within One for all that he could, as every previous holder funneled a power into him, a power that was to finish the fight which all of them had started. Standing up strong, All Might charged up his power into his legs, and launched towards All for One. Where do you think you're going, villain? All for One, surprised by All Might's decision to keep going, or rather, by how fast he had got going, or rather, the fact that he was even able to get going at all, was unable to process what was occurring. After all, All Might was hurling towards him at unprecedented speeds, and All for One had to carefully plan around dealing with said speed up to this point, but now, there was no such mercy. One more, Detroit. All Might clocked his arm back, as All for One then attempted his last-ditch effort, one that he had planned for later, once All Might had his injury settled in. He placed his hands forwards in an attempt to forcibly steal One for All from All Might, but all this was to be in vain. Smash! All Might extended his arm forwards, rocketing his smash towards All for One at speeds that went past all the known capabilities of strength within Hero Society, the society of quirks in general, straight into All for One's head. However, even though the smash connected, and the battle ended in All Might's victory, the result was not what was anticipated. In an instant, blood gushed out from the back of All for One's head, as All Might's face of determination changed into one of horror. In his effort to finally end All for One, he did just that, as the top half of All for One's face was deformed, he was dead. While this was technically the best outcome, when All for One's body dropped lifelessly onto the ground, All Might dropped to his knees, horrified by the act that he had committed. The battle that day was kept a secret from the public, but nonetheless, the knowledge of the fight was still possessed by both All Might and All for One, who were free to pass it on as they pleased. Ryuko Matoi, who had escaped to contact the authorities, led them to her house, though it would take them a while to find All Might, standing alongside All for One's dead body, which was later taken to the morgue *. After more police questioning, Ryuko was finally able to return to her father's former home. He kept his promise, the young Ryuko observed, awestruck by the fact that a hero such as All Might actually existed, one that could turn dreams and promises into reality. Heroes. The stunned Ryuko observed, they're really cool. Ryuko then walked into her house, and walked around the house a little bit. After doing so, she found a corner, and sat down in it. If I become cool enough to become a hero, Ryuko thought, then maybe, I can find out just who killed my dad. People are not born equal. That's the hard truth that Izuku Midoriya learnt at the age of 4, when he was beaten by his childhood best friend and bully, Katsuki Bakugo. He was too weak to fight back, but at least he was able to help someone. Only a couple years later, he met a boy by the name of Monkey D. Luffy, who taught him to believe in himself, and that it didn't matter whether or not he had a quirk, he could become a hero. Izuku Midoriya's own limitations were his first and last setback to becoming a hero, as since that day, Izuku has been training by his lonesome, all to fulfill his dream. Wow, Izuku Midoriya muttered, awestruck, a giant villain. Looking over to his right on his way to school, Izuku Midoriya saw numerous heroes battling against a giant villain in his home city of Mustafu, Japan. While this would pose as an odd occurrence in our own world, this was an everyday one in the world of heroes, where fantasy meets reality. Even in such a fantastical world, kids still had to go to school, and Izuku Midoriya was not immune to such a fate. You guys are all third years now. Izuku's middle school teacher began, it's time to start thinking seriously about your futures. In order to attempt to convey a sort of dramatic effect, the teacher slammed the job application forms his students were to fill out onto his desk. Despite the teacher's efforts to draw the attention of his students, our protagonist, Izuku Midoriya, was paying zero attention. Instead, he was writing inside his 16th hero notebook, theorizing ways that he could potentially become a hero, even while quirkless. With boundless determination, Izuku knew that he had to optimize every second of his time, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to become the hero he dreamt of being. I would hand out these career forms, but, the teacher smirked, I assume you all want to be heroes. The teacher then threw the career forms in his hand into the air carelessly after that last statement. Then, as if on cue, everyone in the class began showing off their quirks in excitement, whether they were actually standout, or, the ability to swell up your face a bit, that's actually a quirk that's in the original MHA manga. Izuku, having been absorbed in his notebook, finally snapped back to reality when everyone began utilizing their quirks. Oh, today's the day we were supposed to get our future career forms, Izuku recalled. Everyone must be excited because the teacher said something about heroes. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks. The teacher began, but come on guys, you know it's against the rules to use them in school. Ha, don't lump me in with these crappy losers, sir, a voice yelled out from the back of the room. His confidence could have easily been confused with arrogance, as the blonde-haired boy kept his feet firmly on his desk, as if he owned it. This was the now 14 Katsuki Bakugo, nicknamed by Izuku Midoriya, Kachan. The boy finished his previous statement. As if I had anything like their crappy quirks. Instantly, the demeanor of Bakugo incited a riot in the classroom. Get over yourself, Katsuki. A classmate shouted at the arrogant Bakugo. Shut up, extras should act like extras. Bakugo instantly retorted. Ah, Bakugo, you of course, must be aiming for UA. Hi, the teacher said, adding fuel for another conversation which broke out between the entire class. Seems this is just another instance of Kachan being Kachan. Izuku thought, I should get back to my hero notes. Bakugo then jumped on top of his desk in his excitement to proclaim his own dream. I'll surpass All Might, and become the best hero out there. Bakugo yelled, not to mention, I'll become one of the richest people in the world. Everyone's gonna look up to me and only me. Oh, you're also going for UA, aren't you Midoriya? The teacher said, causing Bakugo's excited face to instantly break. The rest of Izuku's class looked back at him, seeing him writing away in his hero notes. The entire class acknowledging his nerdiness, they began to violently cackle at him, sparking Izuku's attention once more. Huh, Midoriya, no way, a classmate said, surprised. Good grades alone can't get you into the hero program. Another said in disbelief. Izuku looked up at his class momentarily, and then he attempted to go back to writing his notes. Come on, Deku, Bakugo shouted, aiming an explosion at Izuku's desk in anger. Having paid enough attention to see this coming, Izuku grabbed his notebook, making sure that it avoided the explosion so that it wouldn't be ruined. Even though he succeeded, Izuku still flew backwards from the explosion himself. Forget the crappy quirks, you're totally quirkless, and you think you can rub shoulders with me. Izuku slowly got up, retaining a neutral face and brushing his uniform off. In response to Bakugo's question, Izuku only had one thing to say. Sure, everyone in the class erupted into laughter once more, partially at Izuku's alleged naivety, and partially at the simple response he gave to Bakugo. The only one who wasn't laughing was Bakugo himself, who stood still and firm, with an angry look on his face. This little punk, Bakugo thought, as he began to speak up, now. Now if you excuse me, Izuku began to say, walking past Bakugo, and then holding up his notebook, I've got some notes to take. Time passed, and as suddenly as the earlier riot in class began, the class itself had ended. While everyone was packing up, ready to leave school, Izuku was on his phone, looking at an incident which had occurred earlier. Oh wow, this incident with the sludge villain is all over the news, Izuku thought, but I mean, there's not much to it, besides All Might's quick response time. Oh. I should expand my notes on how to arrive at a crime scene quickly. Izuku reached out to grab his notes, but right after he had begun to grip them, Bakugo arrived. We ain't done here, Deku. he said, snatching Deku's notebook outright from the boy's hands. Izuku, seeing this, noted that nothing good would come from staying around here, and quickly formulated a short plan in his head. First, in one swift motion, Izuku stood up, and swatted Bakugo's arm away with his left hand, and with his right, he snatched his notebook right out of Bakugo's hands as it was propelled in the direction Izuku hit it. Second, he ran the heck away. Hey, get back here, shitty Deku, Bakugo said, yelling out at Izuku, but he had already left the classroom. Damn, Bakugo, he really got you good, one of Bakugo's friends said to him, as Bakugo looked off at the boy, pissed yet awestruck at Deku. He just won't stay in his place, Bakugo thought. Ever since that monkey kid arrived years ago, he's been getting tougher and tougher. I can't let him surpass me. In the hallways, Izuku ran at blistering speeds until he reached the exit of the school, looking behind himself once he did. Good, Bakugo's not chasing me, Izuku thought aloud through heavy breaths. Phew. Izuku stood idly in the hallway to catch his breath for a moment. Though after said moment, he decided to keep moving quickly, as he never knew when Bakugo might change his mind about chasing him. Up at the top floor were Bakugo and his friends, who hadn't moved from the classroom. One of Bakugo's friends took note of Izuku's position on the ground. How the hell did he get down there so fast? He questioned, getting the attention of both Bakugo and his other friend. You gonna go after him, Bakugo? Izuku, who was walking away from the school, had slowed his pace to make sure he heard Bakugo's words. TCH, who gives a crap? Bakugo loudly said, let him have his win, it'll just make the next time we stomp him sweeter. Izuku then sighed, and decided to begin walking faster. I really do hate always having to run like this, Izuku admitted to himself. I wish I had a quirk, a devil fruit, something I could fight back with. In the past, as a part of his studies for becoming a hero, Izuku attempted to research the so-called devil fruits that Luffy had told him about. When he did, however, nothing popped up about them on the internet, nor in any books when he went to the library to research quirk development. It's not that I don't believe Luffy, but could he have been wrong about devil fruits? Then how did he get his powers? Izuku, after thinking this, smacked himself on both sides of his head with his hands. No. Don't think those thoughts. He's Luffy, the only one who ever saw value in you. After his initial research, it's worth noting that Izuku was unable to check the internet ever again about the devil fruits. This is because on the same day that he had researched them, a group of police officers had come to his house while he was at school to check his house, which gave his mother quite the shock. He later checked his browsing history, and found any and all traces of devil fruits purged from it. Well, he did say he wanted to be a pirate, Izuku thought, and it's not like being one is exactly a legal career path. But, without any way to get a quirk, is it actually? Izuku's defensive thoughts interrupted his offensive ones. Don't say it. Even possible to be a hero, Izuku stated aloud. Izuku then thought back to the days that he first discovered he was quirkless, how he watched the same All Might video again and again, and due to it, how he was inspired to save people. All the way back then, I had already decided, Izuku thought, or at least, he forced himself to think this way. I decided not to care what anyone says. I just have to keep my chin up, and keep moving forwards. As Izuku thought this, from behind him, a weird collection of gloop noises could be heard. Upon hearing this, Izuku quickly turned around, and found a villain made of sludge. A medium-sized body, to hide in, the panting villain thought aloud. The villain quickly tried to force himself onto Izuku Midoriya, but Izuku Midoriya had done his research. Predicting the villain's swift lunge towards him, Izuku slid underneath the villain in order to dodge them. A Logia-type quirk, those are nearly unheard of, Izuku thought, before realizing, and if he's a Logia, then that means, a quirkless nobody like me can't do anything, but, I can still try my best. Though he had never actually fought a villain before, Izuku knew that laws had specifically adapted to regulate those with quirks. Therefore, as someone quirkless, he was free to do whatever he could to fight back. Come on kid, I'll be quick. Just 45 seconds, and then it'll all be over, the villain slimily stated. No way, Izuku said with a nervous smile, I can't die, not just yet. I have to prove to myself, Izuku thought, that I can become a hero. Suddenly, out of the same sewer drain the villain came out of, a very large man popped out, yelling, worry not, citizen. You won't die. All Might, Izuku thought, because I am here. All Might yelled, rushing towards the villain in a motion Izuku could barely register, Texas, smash. Suddenly the villain's form dissipated, as sludge rushed off his body, leaving only a few pieces behind. Wait, if All Might can hit him like that, maybe he's not even a Logia. Izuku quickly noted, then, he's a mutant type with the features of a Logia. So his body has to have solid parts somewhere that his sludge melds to. Izuku then got his empty bottle of water out from his backpack, as All Might watched on. And if I were to guess where that solid part was, I'd guess it's right. Izuku then spun the cap off his water bottle with his left hand, as a look of shock appeared in All Might's eyes. Here! Izuku shouted, as he scooped up the sludge villain's 2 eyes with his water bottle in a single, smooth motion. After this, Izuku quickly put the cap which was in his left hand onto the bottle in his right. Once he put the cap on, not yet tightening it, the rest of the sludge surrounding the area evaporated and reformed inside the bottle, as Izuku had expected. Oh my, brilliant work, citizen, All Might shouted at Izuku, who was shocked that he was even talking to All Might, unable to even get out a word. My apologies for getting you caught up in my villain hunt, mistakes such as that aren't really my style. It only happened because this place is foreign to me, so I didn't know all the routes. All Might then motioned for Izuku to hand him the untightened bottle with the sludge villain inside it, which Izuku did, still bewildered that he was talking to the All Might. Whoa, that's really All Might. The #1 hero in the entire world. His text is even written in a completely different style than everything else. But, enough excuses, my success here is all thanks to you boy. Your ability to swiftly contain this villain here was enough to make even me jealous. All Might announced, just be careful, and remember you're not able to use your quirk in public without a hero license. Izuku was unable to get out even a word, as his body seemingly shut down. Unthinkingly and robotically, Izuku got his notebook out of his backpack, and held it in front of him. All Might initially looked confused, but quickly understood what Izuku wanted. The hero opened the book in front of him and wrote down, All Might, on one of its pages which didn't have anything on it. Hero analysis. For the future number 16, All Might thought, walking right past Izuku after he signed his book. Now, I must bring this fellow to the authorities. All Might shouted back at Izuku, catch you again sometime, though now that I think about it, hopefully I won't, seeing as that means you'll be in danger. Quickly taking note of the situation, Izuku turned around quickly, managing to sputter out, wait, is that it? A pro hero battles not only enemies, but time as well. All Might shouted, until next time. Hold on, I still want to ask you. Izuku paused, as he suddenly rushed towards All Might. Thank you for your support. All Might shouted, as he propelled himself up into the air, with Izuku attached to him. Hey now, release me. This enthusiasm is a bit much, All Might stated. This high up, with the wind beating upon his face, Izuku noticed the difference in worlds between him and All Might for the first time, but in spite of all that, he still wanted to keep going. But if I let go now, I'll die. Izuku responded, logically addressing All Might's complaint. Fair enough. Plus, I've gotta ask you so many things. Izuku struggled to get those words out, as Izuku could barely handle the speed at which All Might was flying at. Okay, just do me a favor and close your eyes and mouth. It's a pleasure. Izuku quickly blurted out, doing so. After this, All Might then coughed, as blood was dripping out from his mouth. Damn, he thought, I'm running out of time. Landing on a rooftop, Izuku quickly caught his breath, as he questioned to himself, I guess I'm gonna have to go through things even worse than that, if I wanna be a hero. All Might began, as Izuku noted his aggression, Hopefully, the people downstairs will help you get down. Frankly, I have no time right now. Just wait a second. Izuku spluttered. No, I will not wait. All Might responded with efficiency, but Izuku responded back even faster. Even without a quirk, could I still become a hero? This question caused All Might to hesitate. All Might noted, all this time, I've been going through just the typical hero routine. It seems I've neglected this kid's dream. Realizing this, All Might decided to wait, but just for a moment. Quirks are, in the middle of his sentence, and on a dime, All Might stopped speaking and began coughing, with a cloud of smoke forming from All Might's body alongside this. Izuku took notice of All Might's condition. All Might, are you all right? After the cloud of smoke dissipated, the true All Might revealed himself. Wait, that form, Izuku began, are you the real All Might? Or maybe, some kind of imposter? All Might paused, before saying, I am All Might, but when he tried to open his mouth, blood spilled out of it. Whoa, if you're telling the truth, then just what happened to you? Are you hurt? Izuku questioned. All Might sensed Izuku's genuine concern for him. You know how people hold their gut in at the pool? All Might asked, the form I show off is kinda like that. No way, Izuku quickly responded. But, to answer your previous question, All Might then lifted up his shirt, showing Midoriya the injury that was underneath his shirt. 5 years ago, a villain did this to me. Izuku stared at All Might, shocked. He continued. My respiratory system was nearly destroyed, and my stomach was removed. I wasted away because of the after effects of those surgeries, so I can only do hero work for 3 hours a day now. All Might slid his shirt down. Don't write about this on the internet, F 5 years ago, was that, around the same time as your fight against Toxic Chainsaw? Izuku questioned, before doubting his own answer. No, that can't be right. You're right, someone like him could never do this to me. All Might responded, this incident was never made public, I asked it to never be made public. All Might contemplated his next words, as his fight against All for 1 year prior came rushing back to him, a symbol of peace who saves people with a smile, must never be daunted by evil. All Might turned his attention to Izuku Midoriya, who was both motivated and horrified by All Might's words. All Might decided to answer Midoriya's question. The reason I smile is to starve off the overwhelming pressure felt by myself and others. All Might explained, if you're quirkless, people will only feel fear in that fact when a time comes where as a hero, you must make them feel safe, especially since you cannot so easily risk your own life without simply throwing it away, and a hero must always be ready to risk his own life for the safety of others. Giving a conclusion to his own argument which Izuku saw coming, yet dreaded hearing, All Might stated. So, without a quirk, can one become a hero? I should think not. Izuku was devastated, but even so, he understood All Might's reasoning. After all, everyone in his class had proved All Might right, all their doubts, every time he was told his dreams were hopeless, that was them feeling uncomfortable with Izuku's alleged desire to throw his own life away. And, Izuku also knew that the way everyone in his classroom felt wasn't just limited to the classroom, everyone outside of it felt that way too. Izuku was powerless. Oh, I see. The boy responded slowly. All Might saw that he had hurt the kid, but he saw this as the preferable option. After all, while he hid behind the logical reason he had said before, the simple fact was that he didn't wish for the kid in front of him to hurt himself. He wished to protect the quirkless kid who was dreaming of becoming a hero. Though, All Might's gut felt that something was off. After all, this kid had effortlessly followed up on his attack on the sludge villain, analyzing its weakness in a split second and capturing it. All Might also noted how fast Izuku had to have acted in order to quickly grab onto his own buff form when he took off, a feat that would have forced him to make a difficult decision in a singular moment. On top of all this, Izuku radiated a certain energy, or maybe it was charisma, that All Might couldn't put his finger on. This kid surely had to have held on to a hopeless dream after years of neglect from society, that alone made him strong. Could he be? All Might questioned himself, before coming to a conclusion. No, he's just a kid. Though, if you still desire to help people, becoming a police officer is always an option. All Might optimistically stated, turning around and approaching the door which led downstairs. Villain custody officers are often mocked, but that too is admirable work. Opening the door downstairs, All Might looked back at the kid, frozen in place and shaking. He felt bad, but he was confident that this was the best option he could have taken. Before All Might left, he said one final thing. Quote, "It's not wrong to dream." All Might began, "However, you need to be realistic, kid." All Might shut the door behind him, and began walking down the stairs. He yet again remembered the skill of Izuku. Quote, "Oh yeah, speaking of villain custody officers, I have to get this guy." All Might then pulled the water bottle out of his pocket, only to realize that the water bottle cap wasn't on as tightly as he would have liked, and the sludge villain was nowhere to be seen. The cap, I should have checked it. How could I be so stupid? This is all my fault. I'm pathetic. Suddenly, out the window of the staircase, an explosion could both be faintly heard and seen in the distance. Oh no, All Might said aloud. Having just had his dreams crushed, Izuku walked down an empty street, sighing and feeling sorry for himself. I ignored everyone else who said I couldn't do it, but now, even the best of the best said that I could never become a hero. Izuku thought, as tears welled up in his eyes. Don't cry. You already knew, that's why you tried so hard, right? Suddenly, Izuku stopped, and remembered a conversation he had with Luffy in the past, the only person who had ever believed in him. Around the 4th day that Luffy was at Izuku's elementary school, Izuku was continuing to help Luffy out with perfecting the aim of his gum-gum pistol. But, Izuku began, "The king of the pirates, you're already getting shown up by your brother without any powers, and there are thousands of people who'll probably be stronger than him when you grow up. How would you even begin trying to become the pirate king?" At this assertion, after an initial display of frustration, Luffy's mouth suddenly formed a smile. "Hey, come on now," Luffy said, as Izuku's eyes lit up once Luffy stared back at him. "It's not about whether I can or can't, it's about whether I will or won't. And let me tell you, I will. Or I'll die trying." Izuku, right then and there, was in awe of Luffy's words, and the wisdom he possessed. His awe would be interrupted a moment later however, as Luffy firmly hit Izuku on the head. "And come on, how many times do I have to tell you, quirks don't matter. My granddad didn't have any quirks or devil fruit powers, and he's a really strong guy in the Marines." "Luffy, that hurt," Izuku whined. "Not as much as it'd hurt to give up on your dreams, you dummy." Recalling the memory, Izuku sniffled, and wiped away his tears, but a solemn expression remained on his face. Luffy, catching something out of the corner of his eye, Izuku looked to his left, and saw that a crowd of people were forming around a street, a crowd that Izuku recognized as one which would likely be watching a villain attack. On instinct, Izuku began to approach the scene to analyze it. "Hey," Izuku thought, "I'm so used to gawking around these scenes, but really, what is there to gain? I'll only make myself feel more like a loser." Shocked, Izuku looked ahead at the scene, as he quickly noticed the sludge villain right in front of him. His sadness was washed away in an instant, replaced by a feeling of shock and guilt. The sludge villain. How didn't I? Izuku then recalled how he haphazardly put the cap on to test his hypothesis, but then, he never bothered to make sure it was tight, and when he gave it to All Might, his body had already fully shut off. How could I be so stupid? This is all my fault. Izuku muttered under his breath. A second later, he began to push his way to the front of the crowd. "Why are the heroes just standing there?" a passerby asked, and another responded, saying, "They probably just don't have the right quirks for the job. Happens all the time." Shoving his way to the front, Izuku then thought to the unknown victim of the assault ahead of him, "Hang in there. A hero is bound to come soon, they'll save yo." But, once Izuku reached the front of the crowd, all of his thoughts stopped. In front of him, was Kacchan, but not just Kacchan, as replacing the typical, cocky expression he usually wore, he instead had one of pure fear on his face. Tears were welling up in the boy's eyes, because when he was so full of hopes, dreams, and ambitions, it just wasn't right for all of them to come crashing down in front of him. And after that one simple look of despair, Izuku saw all that he needed to. His body twitched, and hesitated, as before his thoughts could even catch up to him. His body started to move all on its own, to save the person who was right in front of him. A moment later, he stopped walking, and broke out into a full sprint. "Wah kid, get back here you fool!" A police officer shouted, but it didn't matter. Adrenaline was coursing through Izuku Midoriya's veins, because he knew that Bakugo needed saving, and he wasn't just going to sit around for someone with the right quirk to do the job for him. "It's that kid again," the sludge villain said, as the body it was trying to possess also took note. "Deku. It's that kid from the rooftop." All Might, in his true form, thought, currently pushing his way forwards in the crowd. What's he doing? Is he coming here to try and rectify his mistake or something? He'll hurt himself. Why am I running? What am I know? This isn't a time for those thoughts. Izuku thought, his look of worry turning into one of determination, as with a firm expression, he began to formulate a plan. "What I've learned is that the sludge monster has pressure points. If you can trap him in there, the rest of his body will respond. So, who's to say that I can't hurt or damage him there then?" Izuku continued his sprint, but he then began to move even faster than before. He now moved with confidence and purpose. "You're dead," the sludge villain muttered. Izuku didn't care. His legs continued to sprint, faster and faster, and he knew they wouldn't stop until he reached his destination. "Get your hands!" Izuku began to shout, as he launched himself into the air, off of him. Once he shouted that last line, a sudden burst of energy erupted from Izuku, causing the heroes who were beginning to rush towards Izuku to briefly stop dead in their tracks, and some civilians and police officers who were close to the scene to be knocked out. The sludge villain was also momentarily frozen, giving Izuku the perfect opportunity. As he readied his right hand behind him, he shouted out, "Gum gum, smash!" Shooting his arm forwards, he attacked the sludge villain directly in the eye. The sludge from the sludge villain temporarily lost form, allowing Bakugo to be temporarily freed, to the surprise of the heroes surrounding the area. Izuku then quickly grabbed Bakugo, and pulled him out of the sludge villain. The instant Bakugo was pulled out of the sludge, he smacked away Izuku's hand, and landed right beside him. "You!" Bakugo yelled while coughing in the process, as he hadn't breathed for a long while, and sludge was stuck in his lungs. Why? There were any number of reasons Izuku's legs forced him to run, but of them all, only one came to the top of his head, with Kachan now right beside him. "You looked like you needed saving," Izuku shouted, as the sludge villain, knocked off of its target, now saw potential in another. The villain rushed towards Izuku like their first interaction, but this time, he was too fast for the hero to react to. He began to attack and try to steal Izuku's body, as Bakugo, who was right beside Izuku, stood back, frozen in fear. "No, he's just there to try and save that kid," All Might thought to himself, hearing Izuku's last lines. He was still hanging back on the sidelines, and because of that he began to clench his fists. "How pathetic of me, pathetic, pathetic. Rahhhhh. Izuku screamed, as energy pulsated off of him, an energy which was only present due to his extreme emotional state, adrenaline, and the will to achieve his dream and become a hero. The sludge villain was barely able to contain Izuku due to his extraordinary willpower. "Does he have a death wish or something?" a hero yelled, as a group of them began rushing towards Izuku. Of everyone there, only one man just barely understood the flurry of emotions that Izuku was experiencing. "The lesson I left you with, I should practice what I preach." All Might yelled at Izuku from afar. A pro hero should always be ready to risk his life. Shocked by All Might's arrival, Bakugo looked on at the Titan approaching from behind him. His mouth, Bakugo thought, he's bleeding, but he's still coming here. Detroit, All Might clocked his arm back, and as he pushed his arm forwards, he shouted, "Smash!" In an instant, sludge filled the air, and a tornado so large formed that it shook the entire surrounding area. Izuku and Bakugo would have been completely blown away from the impact if not for All Might grabbing onto them. The air pressure attack from All Might was long and violent, and once it dissipated, all that was left was rain. He changed the weather, all with a single punch. One of the passers-by yelled, in awe of All Might's insane strength. After the fight, the heroes collected the eyes of the sludge villain and contained them, as per All Might's instruction. Due to his actions, the heroes were all exceptionally mad at Izuku Midoriya. After all, he had risked his life for nothing. All Might was there, and Izuku was quirkless. What could he have done? Meanwhile, thanks to his ability to fend off the sludge villain, on top of his powerful quirk, Bakugo got all the praise, but the boy didn't see this incident the same way the heroes did. "Hey Deku!" Bakugo shouted, finding Izuku as the boy was walking back to his house. The overwhelmed Izuku instantly got into a fighting stance upon seeing Bakugo, which Bakugo momentarily flinched because of. Nonetheless, he continued. I never asked you to save me. I could have taken that guy myself. How dare a quirkless failure like you try and pity me? Don't mock me, stupid nerd," Bakugo yelled, quickly spinning around and walking away after he got out of his system all that he needed to. What a tough guy, Izuku thought, sarcastically. He saw through Bakugo's mask, and how he was too proud to accept help from him. It wasn't like he didn't have good reasons for it though, after all, he was quirkless. But still, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Izuku said to himself in a slightly raised voice, I'm gonna become a hero, no matter what. Darn right you will, a voice shouted out from behind a shrub, which shocked Izuku as he quickly turned around, only for All Might to reveal himself, shouting, I am here. All Might, how? Why are you here? Weren't you surrounded by reporters? Izuku asked. Shaking them off is nothing to me, after all, I'm all Migh Ga. As All Might was gloating, he quickly shrunk back down to his true form, spitting out blood and smoke as he did so. Izuku raised an eyebrow at this for a moment, instinctively wanting to help All Might, but then he realized this wasn't the time for that. Well, since you're here, Izuku began, closing his eyes, not believing what he was about to say, I'd like to apologize for a few things. 1. I'd like to apologize for grabbing onto you earlier. You're the #1 hero, and I should have known better than to act like you didn't have better things to do than talk to me. Kid, All Might tried to interject, but Izuku cut him off before he could continue. 2. I'd like to apologize for not making sure the lid was shut clean on the sludge villain. If not for that, the villain would have safely been in custody without the second incident occurring. Izuku said apologetically. Kid, you really don't have to, All Might attempted to say yet again, but Izuku cut him off once more. And finally, I'd like to apologize, but I can't listen to the advice you gave earlier on the rooftop. Izuku began to say, tilting his head down in shame, I'm sorry, but I don't care if I don't have a quirk, I don't care if you think I'm worthy of becoming a hero. Suddenly, Izuku's head popped up, as he said, no matter what, I will become a hero, because that is my dream. Izuku stood tall, breathing heavily, putting a lot of passion into that speech. All Might was surprised, but a smile on his face still grew nonetheless. Who could have thought that this boy, who I thought was just a naive fanboy, could have been so much more than that? About that kid, I might have to revise what I said earlier. After all, I came here to thank you, and apologize, said All Might, beginning his own speech, mirroring Izuku's own. If it wasn't for you, I'd never have been able to be motivated to fight on against the sludge villain. I'd have been nothing but fake muscles and insincerity. Nah, you're All Might, I'm sure. Izuku would now feel what it was like to be interrupted, as All Might continued his own apology. On the roof, I said that you'd never be able to make someone feel secure as someone quirkless. But, that was simply the prejudice of myself, the prejudice of society. All Might stated, even without me, on both occasions I arrived, I believe you didn't need my assistance, and could have taken on that sludge villain on your own. I told you that you couldn't become a hero, but besides your insane skill, I didn't even take into consideration how many pro heroes have quirks which practically do little to nothing in combat. Thanks All Might, but I really don't think I could have. Kid, you're special. Of all the heroes at the scene, it was only you, quirkless as you may be, who acted. Who spurred me into action. All Might confidently stated, most of the top pro heroes, they show greatness, even as children. Many of them claim that, in moments of great danger, their bodies moved before they even began thinking. to protect. Izuku, hearing these words from All Might, was suddenly reminded of the words that his mom said to him way back when he had been diagnosed as quirkless. "I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm sorry." Trembling, even though he was far more confident than he usually should have been, he nonetheless fell to his knees, as tears began falling from his eyes. "That is what happened to you back there, yes." "Why yes," Izuku said, choking on his words through his tears. "Then, Izuku Midoriya, whether you're quirkless, powerless, half-dead, or otherwise, I don't care." All Might stated with confidence, "You can be a hero." Fantasy, yet again, became reality for Izuku Midoriya, who was crying in front of his childhood hero, who had told him that he could become what he had dreamed of being ever since he learnt just what a hero was. This hasn't been mentioned before, but now is a better time than any to say that this is the story about how Izuku Midoriya fulfilled his dreams, and became the world's greatest hero. But, there's more. This is also the story about a boy who dreamed of becoming the king of the pirates, and becoming free in the process, as well as a girl, who simply wanted to experience just what having a family was really like. This is a tale of three people, who will go down in history as legends. The legendary hero, All Might, of an unknown age and unknown quirk, has indisputably been the #1 hero practically since he began working as a hero. Every year he's held his title, there's been a marked decrease in the appearance rate of villains. His existence alone is enough to deter villainy. He's a man that truly lives up to the title of the symbol of peace. And that man, standing in front of Izuku Midoriya, has just told him that he could become a hero, quirkless or not. A million thoughts popped into Izuku's head at that moment. Every time someone said that he couldn't, every time someone had looked down on him, every time that they said he was hopeless, while to All Might, the words he spoke may have simply been words, to Izuku, they were a payoff, however small it might be, for all the years of suffering and humiliation he had endured. "Though to be honest, kid," All Might said, sparking the attention of the crying Izuku, who wiped away some of his tears to have a more clear vision of his hero. "The reason I told you that you couldn't become a hero on the rooftop is because I didn't want someone like you to be unsafe, to risk their life for a job that us with the greatest powers in the world should be responsible for doing." Izuku looked up at All Might, understanding his words, but not seeing the intention behind them. All Might had just told him that even while quirkless, he could still be a hero, but, had he changed his mind already? "But kid, I know that someone like you would never give up." All Might began, "And I know that regardless of whether or not I do this, you'll grow up to become a great hero." Izuku waited for All Might to continue, thankful that All Might hadn't changed his mind, but also curious as to just where the #1 hero was going. "Basically, what I want," All Might paused, and then decided to go with an entirely different train of thought. "I think you're worthy of inheriting my power." Izuku's face suddenly changed from one of tear-filled elation into one of pure shock, and seeing the transformation in real time, All Might couldn't help but chuckle at the boy's expression. "Huh," Izuku muttered, unsure of what to say. "What's that face for, boy?" All Might asked through his fading laughter. "It's a proposal, one you'll have to work hard to accept. I'm asking you if you want to try to accept my power." A transfer of powers. How is that even possible? Izuku thought to himself. Wait, did this have something to do with the devil fruits? Wait, should I even know about the devil fruits? Izuku's thoughts ran wild, but All Might, seeing this, attempted to stop those wild thoughts. "It concerns my power, kid," All Might stated, bringing Izuku's attention back to the land of the living. "Everyone always guesses it's super strength, or boost power, and I avoid the question by laughing it off with a joke." Izuku was intrigued by All Might's words. After all, any All Might fanboy would be. Because All Might, the symbol of peace, has to come off as a natural-born hero. All Might explained. "Wait, then you're saying," Izuku muttered under his breath. "But my quirk," All Might interjected, "it was passed down to me, like an Olympic torch." "P passed down to you?" Izuku questioned. "Yes," All Might said, "and now, I believe it's time for me to pass the baton to you." Izuku's eyes bore wide with surprise, and, even though it was possible he shouldn't know this information, he figured he better speak about it sooner rather than later. Wait, does that mean that you can give me something like a devil fruit? Izuku asked, as All Might's eyes went wide open in shock. Huh, how do you know about the devil fruits? All Might asked. Oh, so they are real. Izuku said, I heard about them from an old elementary school classmate, who had transferred from the East Blue. An East Blue classmate, EH. Well, that explains it. All Might stated, no kid, devil fruits are something that only really exists in the Grand Line, never heard of one being in the East Blue, but it's a long story, with a lot of illegal elements which I'd rather not get into. That stuff is meant to be completely hidden from people outside the seas. But then how can you, Izuku began, expected to be cut off. I have the ability to transfer power, that is the quirk I inherited, it is called, One for All. All Might revealed. Izuku continued to be awestruck, as every piece of information All Might revealed was even more interesting than the last. The original user of the quirk cultivates its power, and then passes it on to another. The next refines that power, and then they pass it to another. In this way, One for All grows, generation after generation, passing on from heroic soul to heroic soul. So then, just because you're concerned about me, you'd really give up that power? Izuku questioned, unable to grasp the logic of the situation, and just how All Might thought that such a legendary power should end up in his hands. Don't sell yourself short, kid, I'd never tell someone this just on a whim. All Might said, causing Izuku to struggle even harder to fit the pieces of the puzzle together as to just why All Might had picked him. From your ability to quickly analyze and dispatch the sludge villain from earlier, to your determination to find an answer and become knowledgeable on your ability to become a hero on the rooftop, going so far as to grab onto my back earlier, and finally, the fact that you rushed into danger, against a foe you didn't think you had a chance of winning against, all to save another, you were more heroic than the heroes back against the sludge villain, for crying out loud. If those are not the qualities of a true hero, then I don't know what would be. Tears were trying to well up in Izuku's eyes, but he held them back. After all, now was not the time for tears, not in a moment like this. But of course, All Might began, this all depends on if you're willing to take my power, so, what do you say? Will you accept my power? Wiping away his tears, Izuku Midoriya thought quickly about the decision he was making. In just the short time I've known him, he's done so much for me. Izuku thought, he tried to protect me on the rooftop, he's saved me twice, he's even indulged his greatest secrets to me. Do I have a reason not to accept? No, I don't. Izuku brought his arm down from his eyes, which were filled with tears a moment earlier. Replacing that sad, yet grateful look that he bore seconds earlier, Izuku now held a steady one filled with determination. Yes, Izuku Midoriya replied, I accept. 3 full months before the day of the UA Hero Course's exams, All Might got out of his truck and made his way onto the Takoba Municipal Beach Park. It had been 7 months since he had begun training young Midoriya to get his body ready to handle One for All, the quirk he had intended to pass down to him. And, on the beach that day had finally come, due to something he hadn't expected. On top of a pile of trash at 6 a.m., was Izuku Midoriya, screaming his head off. There wasn't a speck of trash left on the beach, and the view was beautiful. Not only did you finish 3 months before the deadline, you also completely exceeded my expectations. Oh, my goodness, All Might shouted, transforming into his muscular state at that last line. Izuku, tired from all his hard work, began to fall down from the pile of trash. Utilizing One for All, All Might quickly leapt up the trash heap, caught Izuku, and then brought him down to ground level safely, all in the blink of an eye. Well done, All Might shouted at the tired Izuku, who was in his arms. All Might, Izuku panted, I did it, I did it. Astounding work, kid, All Might said, lightening his grip on the boy and letting him down, you're a real entertainer. It's hard to believe that you're just a teen. All Might quickly pulled his phone out from his pocket, here, take a look. What's this? Izuku asked. It's you, just 7 months ago. All Might said, showing Izuku a picture of himself, struggling to carry one of the beach's heavier objects. At that time, Izuku wasn't badly built due to how seriously he took heroics previously, but he still needed the training with All Might that he got in order to whip himself into shape. And look at you now. All Might said, in awe of Izuku's newfound muscular body. Excellent work, young Midoriya. Izuku, through his heavy breathing, made a slight smile. It seemed that his 10 months of hard work paid off. The path forward is now clearer than ever before, All Might shouted excitedly, now that you're a true blue vessel and all. Izuku paused, and looked at his hand. While this feeling was good, another feeling seeped in from the back of his brain. It kind of feels like, I cheated though. Izuku said, I mean, I've gotten all this help from you, All Might, and even back in the past, I got so much help too. Is this really something I deserve? Don't kid yourself, young Midoriya. All Might said after allowing Izuku time to finish. Whatever help you've gotten in the past was surely something that someone else gained as their birthright. There's a difference between being born with a silver spoon, and working your butt off to earn it, my boy. All Might then plucked off a piece of his hair. Take this to heart, kid. This power, it's yours, fair and square. The exhausted Izuku smiled weakly once more, clenching his fists. No matter what came next, he would be ready. Now, eat this, All Might shouted, putting his hair in front of Izuku. Izuku mumbled. A little while before this altercation between Izuku Midoriya and All Might, another legendary event was occurring only a few hours away from the scene. A pirate crew had just traveled around the entirety of the first half of the Grand Line. This pirate group now stared at the wall which separated them from continuing their journey. The second half of the Grand Line was just beyond this wall, the New World. So, it seems we've finally reached the halfway point. The Twin Cape, where we met Laboon, is on the other side of the world, and connected to this wall. I'm glad we got this far without losing anyone. A boy with a straw hat confidently declared. I can't see the top. A furry friend of the straw-hatted boy said, this thing is huge. This is the Red Line, shouted the straw hat boy once more. The Red Line was a massive structure, made up of rocks which had a reddish tint. It was thousands of meters high, and surrounded the entire world, or at least, that was the popular belief in the Four Blues. I'm tearing up, a long-nosed sniper said, we've all been through so much together. When I was just a baby, I came from the South Blue through Reverse Mountain, a person with blue hair and only a Speedo on his bottom half said. But that was over 30 years ago. 5 years ago, I came from the West Blue to this ocean. A girl with black hair, a calm expression, and tanned skin said. If we sail around the other half of the world, we'll encounter this wall one more time, and when that happens, the Straw Hat Boys said, excited by the prospect that they had reached halfway, I'm gonna be the king of the pirates. This was the pirate crew of none other than Straw Hat Luffy, a pirate with a 300 million berry bounty, and very soon, their crew was to be sailing underneath the Red Line, and shortly after that, onto the shores of none other than Japan, a place which was right above the Sabayati archipelago. Really doesn't matter what it is you eat. All Might explained, just so long as you get some of my DNA. Not exactly how I thought this would go, Izuku said, still shocked by the odd circumstances he found himself in, but nonetheless, after some hesitation, Izuku still ate All Might's hair. Okay, I ate the hair, Izuku said, unsure if All Might was just doing this to be funny or not, but, I don't feel myself transforming, is that normal? Of course not, you need some time to digest. You'll start feeling something in a few hours, All Might stated, his voice trailing off. Izuku saw All Might, facing towards his left and out to sea. In response, Izuku looked out to sea as well, and was shocked by what he saw. It was a ship, one that had just somehow appeared out of the ocean. Pirates, All Might mumbled, as Izuku faced All Might. Pirates, Izuku questioned, what do you mean, All Might? Well, to keep things simple, after pirates circumnavigate the first half of the Grand Line, they have to go under the Red Line in order to try and proceed to its second half, which is located right past the United States. Since that's on the other side of the world, they have to circumnavigate the entire globe to get there. All Might explained, and out of curiosity, Seeing as they've never seen the 7 continents, some pirates decide to come here into Japan after finding their way past the red line. Due to this, pirates infrequently arrive on these shores. Really? Izuku shouted, how come I never heard about this? To keep it short, the world government hides stuff like this to make the world feel like a safer place. After all, pirates don't exist in this area. All Might explained, but no matter, you must be feeling tired, young Midoriya. After all, you just finished training. Go contact the authorities, and I'll handle these villains. Despite All Might's order, however, Izuku hesitated once he actually got a proper look at the ship that was approaching. At the front was a cute-looking lion, with a cross of bones surrounding its head, almost as if it was trying to mask its cuteness. The boat seemed to be magnificently and sturdily constructed, and it bore a 1 on its side for some strange reason. But what intrigued Izuku most of all was the pirate flag on the sails of the ship, the Jolly Roger. It didn't seem to be intimidating at all, as the traditional skull and crossbones of a Jolly Roger additionally had a not very scary straw hat placed on top of its head. Wait a second, Izuku mumbled, starting to speak more clearly once he got his thoughts in order. All Might. I think I know who this ship belongs to. What, you do? All Might shouted, as the instant that he said that, the captain of the ship jumped off of it, shooting into the air. He wore a blue vest, and had black shorts, but most importantly, he possessed a hairstyle, kind face, and straw hat which seemed awfully familiar to Izuku Midoriya. All right, the captain shouted, we're in Japan. Man, this place brings back some good memories. Izuku looked onwards, wondering if the man in front of him was who he thought it was. Have you been here before, Luffy? The orange-haired navigator questioned. Yup, back when I was 6, my grandpa took me here to try and convince me to become a Marine. The captain replied. Oh yeah, how'd that work out? The navigator asked, already knowing the answer. It didn't. The captain swiftly responded. Figures. The conversation between the captain and the navigator was quickly cut off once Izuku decided to approach the ship. Hey, Luffy, is that really you? Izuku shouted at the captain. Upon seeing his friend from childhood, the captain, Straw Hat Luffy, had his face extend into a wide smile. Oh, hey, Luffy shouted back, catching each other's eye. Izuku and Luffy ran up to each other, both glad to see the other. Suspicious, All Might, still in his buff form, cautiously approached the duo from behind. Luffy and Izuku shared a quick fist bump upon seeing each other for the first time, and once that finished, Luffy decided to ask Izuku about his dream. Boy, am I glad to see you again, little bush. Luffy said, utilizing the nickname he gave Izuku during their youth to refer to the boy. Have you made any progress towards becoming a hero since I've been gone? Yup, Izuku responded with a smile. Right now, I'm doing some intense training with the #1 hero in the world. Whoa, that's so cool, Luffy shouted, with stars seemingly appearing in his eyes. I know, right, Izuku said back, smiling and puffing out his chest confidently. Luffy, you know him? The archaeologist of the Straw Hat Pirates asked her captain. Yeah, I went to school with this guy. Luffy shouted back up. You went to school, the sniper interjected, clearly shocked by the fact. Izuku, care to tell me how you know a pirate as infamous as Straw Hat Luffy? All Might questioned, a criminal dangerous enough that the government saw it fitting to warn the top 10 heroes about. Well, when I was around 6 years old, after I helped him find his class, we became friends, and I helped him train his devil fruit powers. Izuku explained, while we only knew each other for a week, he was the only person who ever didn't look down on me, and is the only reason I decided to continue trying to become a pro hero. All Might was unsure of how to react in this situation. On one hand, Luffy seemed to be someone friendly enough who meant a great deal to his pupil, young Midoriya. He didn't doubt his student's intention, but Luffy was still an extremely dangerous criminal. Just because Izuku knew him in elementary school, that didn't mean that he was the same as back then. But, then again, he didn't know much about the Grand Line or piracy in general due to the world government, so he wasn't sure of what exactly Luffy's motives were for being a pirate. Whatever the case, All Might decided to push onwards, not yet having enough information. And, you trust him? All Might asked. Yeah, even back then, he wanted to become a pirate, and his courage to chase after his dreams really rubbed off on me. Izuku explained, before processing the situation, and turning his attention back to All Might. Should I not trust him? All Might considered the situation momentarily. He had learned a lot more about Luffy, but still couldn't ease up just yet. Well, regardless of that, Straw Hat Luffy is still a dangerous criminal, one who has a bounty of 300 million berries. What? 300 million? Izuku shouted, even converting that to yen, that's more than most people make in their lifetime. What? I just beat up some mean warlord dudes, and broke into some government places. Luffy responded nonchalantly. You beat up some of the warlords of the sea? All Might shouted, shocked. Come on Luffy, read the room. The sniper shouted down at Luffy. Come on, it ain't like we did anything that bad. Luffy said, upset that he was being scolded. Luffy's nonchalant attitude prompted the sniper to slump down into a depression, muttering something along the lines of, we're doomed. Luffy's smile returned as he turned his head back to Izuku. I get it if you're trying to be a hero though. Luffy explained considerately, grabbing onto Izuku's shoulder, it's just like with Kobe back a while ago. He wanted to be a marine, so we parted ways, and if you wanna be like Kobe, I don't see a problem with that. Luffy had a certain innocence and charisma to him. All Might saw this, and believed that Luffy wasn't a bad person, but he was still a criminal, so was it really okay for him to let young Midoriya be sided with him? Plus, what if they were trying to bait in young Midoriya so that they could double-cross him? He could never forgive himself if that was the case. But, whatever happened, All Might had faith in his own strength to at least bail young Midoriya out if the time came where such was necessary, even if All Might didn't know the strength of those on the Grand Line. On top of this, he also understood just how important Luffy seemingly was for young Midoriya's development, and figured that he might as well let the two have some time to catch up. With his thoughts in order, All Might decided to leave the final decision up to his pupil. Young Midoriya, All Might began, as Izuku turned around to look at All Might. While he may be your friend, Luffy is still a dangerous pirate. If you truly are aiming to become a hero, then, you must not be sided with him. Izuku looked down, and began to mutter, I understand, before being interrupted. However, I do understand how this boy was a hero to you, even before I had met you. If you truly wish to spend time with him, you may. All Might said, as Izuku and Luffy's eyes lit up. All Might looked into them, and he continued the smile that his buff form was known for. All right, Luffy shouted, clearly glad that Izuku was coming with them. Izuku flashed a smile at Luffy's innocent enthusiasm. Of course, you still shouldn't be seen with him in public, so you'll have to stay in private, or wear a disguise, or... Don't worry sir, the orange-haired navigator would interject, if he's a friend of Luffy, we've got him covered. Just come aboard onto our ship, and we'll get you all sorted out. Yeah, we'll get you all sorted out, just come aboard the Sunny. Luffy then stretched out his arm, grabbing onto the Sunny's mast, and pulling himself up onto the ship, laughing as he did so. The boy was clearly very excited that Izuku was coming aboard his ship for the first time, and that really cool hero guy was coming aboard too. Upon seeing Luffy's last demonstration of his abilities, both All Might and Izuku were awestruck. It seems he can stretch himself, Yeah, he ate the gum-gum fruit, so he's a rubber man. Izuku explained, as he veered off topic. Back in elementary school, he couldn't do anything close to that though. He's gotten so much better. The navigator of the Straw Hat Pirates interrupted Izuku and All Might's discussion before they could go any further. I'm dropping down the bridge for you guys, so you'll be able to climb aboard in a few seconds, the navigator stated. Climbing aboard onto the Thousand Sunny, Izuku and All Might instantly knew that this was a ship that had some serious effort put into it as they observed it. The first thing they noticed was the grass which was beneath them, making them feel as if they were on solid ground, even while on board the ship. There were various doors, various staircases, and the craftsmanship behind each part of the ship screamed quality. On the top deck, there was even a tangerine tree growing. Hey, green hair. the swordsman of the crew, who was previously sleeping and currently resting against the side of the ship, commented, "Not a bad style, kid." The swordsman then got up, as he headed into one of the ship's doors, entering a room to train. "Who was that?" Izuku asked the orange-haired navigator, who was leading Izuku and All Might into another room. Luffy was also following them, chanting something along the lines of, "Japan, Japan, land of the meat. Eat all the food, then buy some more." "That's Zoro, our crew's resident nap-taker and swordsman," the navigator answered, "and for your information, I'm Nami, the crew's navigator." "Oh, pleasure to meet you," Izuku said, and then, "Just who built this ship? The effort that's been put into it, even I can tell it's unbelievable." All Might questioned. "That'd be me, bro." The shipwright interjected, "The name's Frankie, I'm a shipwright and half cyborg, and I built the Thousand Sunny for these kind folks when their old ship couldn't carry them anymore." "You're a robot," All Might questioned, "is that your quirk?" "Huh, quirks. I got plenty of those, but none of them are probably the kind you're thinking of," Frankie stated. "Like superpowers," All Might elaborated. "Oh, you mean devil fruit abilities?" "Nah, I built this bad boy all by myself," Frankie said, as he smacked his stomach, signifying that he meant his body. "Interesting," All Might noted. "Most of our crew don't have any devil fruit abilities either," Nami commented. "In fact, besides Luffy, the two strongest members of our crew don't have any, those being Zoro and Sanji." Izuku and All Might both were flabbergasted at this realization. "No way. Even while they're both quirkless," Izuku thought. Just how does the Grand Line even work?" All Might questioned internally. "I heard you talking about me, Nami Swan," Sanji stated, offering a drink to Nami, which she would accept with a quick, "Thanks." Izuku, "Right, and you in the back, you're. Please, just call me All Might." All Might then, "All right," Sanji said with a chuckle, "I'm the cook for this ship here, Sanji, and I'm not bad in a fight either." All Might analyzed Sanji, as he saw that he was simply being humble with that last bit. Just like Zoro before him, every ounce of him oozed the confidence of a seasoned veteran. If he were to have fought Sanji all on his own, he foresaw that it would be a tough call as to who would win. "Just how tough are these pirates?" All Might questioned while still holding a smile. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect a pretty lady who's in trouble," Sanji finished, as he offered All Might a drink, which he accepted. He didn't offer Izuku one because the drink was slightly alcoholic. Sanji then walked back to the kitchen to prepare a meal for later, as well as another drink for the crew's archaeologist. "By the way, yes. It is only for pretty women," Nami interjected. All Might scoffed at Nami's comment, finding it somewhat funny, while Izuku didn't really understand what Nami meant. "Yo-ho-ho-ho, are we doing introductions now?" The skeleton swordsman of the crew cheerfully spoke, jumping down from up above to the group of Izuku, All Might, and Nami. "Whoa, are you a skeleton?" Izuku excitedly asked. "Indeed, I ate the revive fruit, which allowed me to live even after my death. I just recently joined the crew a few days ago, but don't worry, I've got a big heart to back it up. Well, I would if I had one, yo-ho-ho-ho-ho," Brook quickly stated, and his quirk was something which Izuku was enamored by. "Don't forget about us either," a mermaid interjected, as herself, a starfish, and an octopus fishman came out, revealing themselves. "Oh yeah, those guys are Kami, Papig, and Hatchin," Nami explained. "They aren't a part of the crew, but we're taking them down to Sabayati." "Down to Sabayati?" All Might questioned. "Yeah, did you not know? Kami told us that directly below Japan is the final island on the first half of the Grand Line, the Sabayati Archipelago," Nami explained. "There are two entrances, one that can be found in an elevator of sorts somewhere in Japan, and a second which can be found by simply taking your ship down a whirlpool, similar to those which you can use to enter into certain parts below the Grand Line." "Wait, you said that it was below Japan?" Izuku questioned, confused. "Yep. Oh, do you not know about how the undersea passages work?" Nami asked. "I must admit, neither do I. Would you be so kind as to explain?" asked All Might. "Well, I could, but I might not be the best at explaining it." "Then allow me, Nami." interjected the Straw Hat's archaeologist. "My name's Robin, and I ate the flower fruit, which allows me to sprout duplicates of my body parts." After the reveal of Robin's name, All Might was surprised, remembering a memo that had come out a while ago for all heroes to be alert for in the past. Due to this, he quickly asked, wait. Your name, are you Nico Robin, the last survivor of Ohara?" "Oh, you know me?" Robin quickly asked in return. "Yes," All Might responded. "At about the time I began being a hero, the world government offered us heroes a notice about you. You were known as a dangerous criminal from an island allegedly filled with them. They said something about you potentially escaping to the 7 continents." Robin simply chuckled at All Might's words, as she decided to reveal to All Might the history which he didn't know. "Yes, I suppose that is technically correct. I am from an island which was filled with criminals," Nico Robin explained, "for the crime of simply researching the Void Century, a period of history intentionally kept a secret by those in the world government for an unknown purpose. The Marines ordered a buster call, which completely erased the island and its history from existence, all when I was only 8 years old." After hearing this, All Might and Izuku were shocked. Neither had heard about what the Marines actually did previously, seeing as the world government kept what went on in the Grand Line a secret, but this. Just because the people of Ohara tried to learn about a period of history, their entire island was destroyed. What was the crime that the innocents of the island committed? Was this really what the heroes of the Grand Line did? And beyond that, for All Might, this called into question how accurate those memos delivered from the world government actually were. The memos they had received went as far to state that Nico Robin was a dangerous criminal, a demon even, who destroyed Marine battleships all on her own. But, the backstory she provided, it was nothing like that. "Thanks to the intervention of some friends who were much stronger than I was, I became the sole escapee from Ohara, and lived my life as a fugitive for 20 years, simply going from place to place in order to try and survive," Robin explained, her expression not breaking from that which she retained before. I'm so sorry," Izuku responded first, as All Might was still too shocked to respond. "Don't worry about it, it's simply something I've had to learn to live with," Robin cheerfully spoke, "and at the very least, that incident allowed me to meet with the friends I have now." "Ah, Robin." Before Nami could say anything else to Robin, All Might got on his arms and knees in a bow. This image caused shock in Izuku due to the image of his hero, All Might, kneeling before someone else. If nothing else, this caused him to further understand the gravity of the situation. "I know this may not be what you want, but on behalf of all the heroes of Japan, the equivalents of Marines in the 7 continents, allow me to give you my sincerest apologies for such an incident ever occurring." Izuku was shocked, but understood. This event surely weighed on All Might's consciousness, as even if it occurred before he was employed as a hero, it was his responsibility as the symbol of peace to ensure that everyone felt safe and secure, and if the Navy was able to go out of their way to destroy an entire island, was that mission really fulfilled? "It's not your fault, but I appreciate the apology nonetheless," Robin smiled. "It shows that things are different now, at least here in Japan." All Might looked up, as Nico Robin smiled. He got up, being thankful that at the very least, he had the blessing of one who he was unable to save. "Anyhow, back on topic," Robin said, "the Grand Line's entry point can be found on Reverse Mountain. There, the current takes you upwards to the top of the mountain, and at the top, your ship will then fall down, to hundreds of feet below sea level." Whoa, Izuku thought, as it seemed the world was a lot bigger than he initially assumed. After going through Reverse Mountain, and following a short undersea path, you can then enter and progress through the Grand Line, a very dangerous sea. Robin explained. "A short undersea path?" Izuku questioned. "How would that even work?" "Down in certain parts of the Grand Line," Nami interjected, explaining for Robin, "due to a sort of bubble surrounding areas of the sea, the ocean parts into a sort of cylinder shape. This allows ships and passengers to sail under the ocean. It's how we were able to get underneath the Red Line, and out here into Japan." "Oh, I get it now," Izuku remarked, amazed by the wonders of the Grand Line. "So then, why did you decide to come to Japan?" All Might questioned. "Fair question," Robin responded. The Grand Line only leads you from island to island until you reach the Red Line, which marks the end of the sea. As I mentioned earlier, we used an undersea pathway in order to go under the Red Line, which allowed us to find our way into the 7 continents. Typically, we should have looked for a whirlpool in order to quickly make our way to the Sabayati archipelago, but our captain insisted on sailing to Japan first. Oh, I see, Izuku stated, beginning to mutter. That makes sense. The seas which the world government operates in are largely unknown to those from outside of it because they're boxed in by the Red Line. It's amazing that such a secret even. Robin chuckled at Izuku's muttering, to the embarrassment of the boy once he caught himself. The existence of these undersea pathways, that makes sense why Japan is so ignorant to the Grand Line, and vice versa, well, that and the Marines' censorship. All Might said, but afterwards he thought, but, that also begs the question, why does what goes on in the Grand Line need to be censored in the first place? To keep people safe. With Ohara in mind, that seems to be the furthest thing from the world government's priority. Yeah. Also the fact that the devices we use to navigate on the Grand Line are different from the ones you need to use in the 7 continents. Nami noted, honestly, it was quite the pain to get into Japan in the first place. Either way, we're planning on sailing back to the reverse mountain equivalent here with our ship, while meanwhile, if you two still wish to go with us, you'll go down the elevator in Japan which takes you to Sabayati. Robin explained. Yep, and I'll be the one taking you there. Papig exclaimed. Let's deal with all that stuff later though, we gotta get these guys' disguises ready first. Nami declared, as Papig shot Nami a thumbs up somehow and backed off. Robin waved goodbye as well, and went back to a book she was reading prior to talking with Izuku and All Might. Just come in here, if you don't mind, Nami stated, opening a door with Izuku and All Might following. The room inside looked to be a very comfortable one. The first thing to take note of were 2 comfy chairs stationed in front of a table, which at the moment was packed with all sorts of clothes. Behind there, open closets could be seen, with the disorganization that had occurred being apparent. To the left, there was a dresser, containing a mirror for convenience, and above that was a clock. Moving further left, there were a pair of beds, and in front of those beds was a standing lamp, and what appeared to be the back of a cannon. Additionally, a treasure chest could be seen hiding behind the beds. Don't get any ideas, Nami commented when she saw Izuku looking at her treasure chest. That's my treasure. Izuku could have sworn he saw dollar signs in her eyes when she said that, but decided that his mind was playing tricks on him. But, there was one thing that was also peculiar about the room, the fact that there was someone inside of it, who was sat down, turned away from the door. You've done well to make it past all my other crewmates, but now, only I, the true captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, await you. The man claimed, as he jumped upwards, quickly turning around in the process. I am Usopp, brave warrior of the sea, who commands an army of 10,000 men. You might as well surrender now, because... As quickly as it started, Usopp stopped his speech because Nami had hit him in the head, clearly unimpressed with him. Did you seriously make a mess of my room? Do you have any idea how long this'll take to clean? Nami shouted at Usopp, her rage being so fierce that Izuku noted that Bakugo now seemed tame in comparison. See, come on now. I heard that we needed to get these guys dressed, so I took it upon myself to put together only the best of the best, defended Usopp, but before he could continue, Nami socked him in the head again. Ask next time, dumbass. Nami shouted, before sighing, beginning to unenthusiastically introduce Usopp. This is Usopp. He isn't a fighter, is a huge coward, and a serial liar. Why don't just tell them that? Usopp shouted, as Izuku and All Might began to look at each other nervously. I am Usopp, sniper, inventor, and the ex-shipwright of the Straw Hat Pirates. And yes, while everything Nami said was true, I still am a valuable part of this crew. Nami chuckled at this. Yes, of course you are. Now clean this up. Yes ma'am. Usopp instantly responded, saluting Nami and getting to work. Alright, now, Izuku, let's get you all situated. Wait, Izuku realized, am I in a girl's room? Using all the clothes at her disposal, Nami put together a disguise for Izuku Midoriya. He wore a pair of sunglasses similar to those that Sanji wore back in Alabasta, as well as the orange vest Luffy wore on Thriller Bark, and an insignificant light blue shirt underneath that. As for pants, he wore a pair of Luffy's dark blue shorts, but he continued to wear his worn-out red pair of sneakers. "Wah, you look awesome, Izuku," Luffy excitedly remarked. "Why you think?" Izuku nervously said, as he wasn't used to wearing the type of clothes he currently did. "I'll admit, you don't look half bad, kind of like what Luffy would look like if he had another brother," Nami vocalized, before turning her attention to All Might, who was still remaining in his buff form, but noticeably straining. "Now you on the other hand, I don't know what I could do to disguise you." "Not to worry, I have one in mind," All Might said, as in a large puff of smoke, he transformed into his true form. Izuku was shocked that All Might revealed this form to those who were strangers to him, but the rest of the Straw Hats seemed not to care. "Whoa, how'd ya do that, old man?" Luffy asked quickly. "I have my secrets," All Might replied, smiling. "Oh, and since this is an undercover mission, call me by my real name, Toshinori Yagi, or just Toshi, for short." Should I have a code name, too?" Izuku questioned. "Nah, you probably won't need it, kid. Your name isn't really known anywhere yet," responded All Might with efficiency. "Oh, right, well, that takes care of that, I guess," Nami stated, though she looked concerned at the frail appearance of All Might. "But, are you sure you're alright, Toshi?" "Yep, I'm just fine." At the end of this statement, All Might began to spit out blood, which Nami and Usopp screamed at, while Luffy went outside the door. "Chopper, the mighty guy's bleeding out his mouth," Luffy shouted. "He's what?" Chopper shouted back down, rushing down the stairs and quickly feeling around All Might's face. "Does it hurt anywhere? Is this a normal occurrence? Have you seen a doctor about this before?" All Might merely laughed at this. "It's fine, kid, it's just a side effect of this form of mine." "Okay, thank goodness, but if you need anything else, don't hesitate to call me," Chopper insisted. "Oh, by the way, my name's Tony Chopper. I'm the doctor of this crew, and I wanna become a doctor that can cure any illness in the world." "Whoa, that's awesome," Izuku excitedly said, "but, you look pretty young to be a doctor." "How old are you?" "I've just turned 15 a few weeks ago," Chopper innocently said. "No way, you're the same age as me, and you're already a doctor." "That's amazing," Izuku said, stars forming in his eyes. "Dang, I wish I had my notebook with me right about now." "Ah, come on, you dummy, you think just because you give me a compliment that'll make me happy?" "Nah, not even a bit," Chopper verbalized, dancing as he did so. "So, now that you've been introduced to my crew, I suppose there's only 3 more introductions left," Luffy announced, as Izuku turned over to look at Luffy. "My name's Monkey D. Luffy, and I'm gonna become the king of the pirates." Izuku smiled, and turned his body fully to face Luffy, introducing himself to him once more. "My name is Izuku Midoriya, and I'm training to become the next symbol of peace." Izuku then turned to face All Might, who smiled back at Izuku, as All Might introduced himself as well. "My name is Toshinori Yagi, also known professionally as All Might, and my dream was to become the symbol of peace for all of Japan, and my dream currently is to train young Midoriya to become my successor." Luffy smiled at Izuku and All Might, who both smiled back. Even in just a few minutes, these 3 had quickly warmed up to one another. "All right, everyone's here, and ready to discuss our plans, correct?" Nami questioned, as everyone positively affirmed their attendance. "First and foremost, let's split into teams. One will stay with the Sunny, and the other will take the entrance here in Japan alongside All Might, Izuku, and Papig." "Who will do what?" "Well," Frankie began, "the Sunny is running pretty low on cola." "Cola? Is this ship powered by cola?" Izuku questioned. "Yep, problem is, the stuff's been getting expensive lately." "Expensive? Cola's pretty cheap here. It's only about 196 yen, which is equivalent to about 176 berries." "You've sold me, kid. I'll come to Japan with you," Frankie asserted. "Really? Don't you think we should probably take the more inconspicuous members into Japan?" Usopp cried, "You're not even wearing pants." "Sorry bro, but pants cramp my style. Frankie responded. Why'd I even bother? Usopp said, sinking into a depression as he did. By that logic, Nami began, Usopp, you should head into Japan as well, Sanji. I'll also head into Japan. There are probably a lot of new ingredients and dishes which I could use to make yours and Robin's meals even more appealing. Sanji interjected. Perfect. Robin, are you willing to go too, just to make sure everyone's kept in check? I don't see any reason why not. Robin responded. Alright, then that should be good. But Nami, Luffy whined, interrupting Nami, I wanna go into Japan. Sorry Luffy, but as it stands, you're the most wanted man out of all of us, and the one who would attract the most attention, well, besides Brook. Nami explained. Oh, I see how it is. Brook quickly replied. AWWWWWWAHHHH. Luffy cried. Luffy, Izuku stated, causing Luffy to look over at him, while maintaining his frown, it's all fine. After all, once you become the Pirate King, you'll be free, and I'll be able to show you around here, right? Luffy's frown instantly turned upside down, as he shouted, yeah. I'll hold ya to it then. So, the two groups were decided. The first group was composed of Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Chopper, Brook, Kami, and Hatchin, who were to all head down to Sabayati via a whirlpool, making sure the Thousand Sunny got down safely. Meanwhile, the second group contained Izuku Midoriya, All Might, Papig, Usopp, Sanji, Robin, and Frankie, who would progress through Japan to find the Sabayati geyser. They were ready to go to the Sabayati archipelago. But, before we go, Hatchin stated, I want you all to promise me one thing once we get to the Sabayati archipelago. Sure, Luffy accepted. What's the promise? The world nobles will be walking about in town. Hatchin explained. Who are they again? Luffy said, looking at Robin. They're the residents of the sacred land, Marihoa. Robin told Luffy, before seeing Izuku's analytical look on his face, they don't usually come to places outside the Grand Line, seeing as it's too inconvenient for them to travel that far. Sometimes they come to privately owned areas in Japan, but that's all. So, what about them, Hatchin? Luffy asked. No matter what happens on Sabayati, promise me you won't defy the celestial dragons. Hatchin desperately said, even if they kill someone right in front of you, pretend you didn't see a thing. Currently, the group of Izuku Midoriya, All Might, Papig, Usopp, Sanji, Nico Robin, and Frankie, are within the city of Mustafu, Japan. Wow, just look at that architecture. Frankie noted, awestruck. Having never seen anything from anywhere in the 7 continents before, the Straw Hat Pirates were like kids in a candy store while they were looking at every facet of the city. Everything was just so different to them, from the design of the buildings, to weird metal objects which rode on the road, but they also took note of some similarities to the seas they grew up on, such as the fact that there were still pop-up food stalls and similar, albeit more basic clothing plastered around in shops. These were only some of the things they noticed. There were so many it was hard to keep track. I take it you're enjoying Japan, Frankie? All Might asked. Totally bro. This place is insane. There are so many pretty women here too. Sanji added. Ah, this place is like a dream come true. While the Straw Hats were enamored by Japan, a conversation broke out between Izuku and Papig. So, just where are we going, Papig? Izuku asked. I'm glad you asked. Papig responded with enthusiasm, we're heading straight for the Sabayati geyser, located in a nearly deserted area of Japan. A deserted area? Izuku questioned. Even if it's deserted, how come I've never heard about anyone going to it? 7 continents people don't know about the seas, and for the most part, people on the seas don't know about the 7 continents. Papig explained, the world government thinks things'll work out best that way, since the 7 continents and the seas are so different. All Might took note of Papig's claim, but didn't interject. His thoughts were still too disorganized. Interesting, Izuku noted, thinking for a moment before coming to another conclusion. So what's stopping people from just randomly coming across the geyser? The world government has claimed it is their own land though, so Japanese citizens don't even think of going on the property, and the Japanese government can't even attempt to expanding over there. Papig explained, this all keeps the geyser safe and hidden from 7-continent residents. Wait, if the world government has claimed it, will it even be safe to enter then? Sanji questioned, wanting to make sure his friends were safe from Marines. Worry not. Due to a number of issues between rookie Marine officers who were tasked with guarding the geyser overstepping their bounds with the world nobles, the geyser's entrance is completely unguarded. Papig enthusiastically replied, with Izuku and All Might flinching at the mention of the world nobles. Rumor has it they're even trying to take down the geyser, and have already disowned it. Don't worry though. The geyser should still be perfectly safe. Oh, all right then, Sanji noted. The group continued to walk forwards after the conversation had trailed off, continuing to talk about whatever they saw as noteworthy in their eyes within the city. Meanwhile, sinking to the back of the group, Izuku and All Might both began to think back to what Hatchin had told them about the world nobles earlier. Even if they kill someone right in front of you, pretend you didn't see a thing. Huh, Izuku questioned, even if they kill someone, that's a joke, right? Hatchin remained silent. Where he had no words, the youngest and most innocent member of the Straw Hat crew stepped up. Just on our adventures alone, Chopper began, we've run into plenty of bad people, whether part of the world government, mistreating people who they thought they were above, or pirates, sick of the rules enforced upon them, and wishing to break anyone and anything associated with them, and unfortunately, in the world of piracy, things like murder just happen. From someone the same age as he was, Izuku was shocked to be hearing such a truth. When he grew up, he believed that there was nothing that couldn't be solved by heroes, but it seems that there was so much more to the world that he didn't know about just yet. Izuku looked over to All Might to judge his reaction, but to his surprise, even All Might looked to be frozen. Even All Might doesn't know about this, Izuku thought, now beginning to question just how such a secret had been kept from even the most well-known, popular, and strongest hero in the world. Though because of all that darkness, it's important to shine a light everywhere we can, Robin asserted, right, Dr. Chopper? Of course, diseases exist everywhere in the world, so because of that, people become doctors to cure them. Ha, Frankie said, smiling, that's a good way to put it, bro. Ah, you think just because you... Izuku's train of thought broke moments later, as he turned to his hero once more. Just like he was, it seemed that All Might was in deep thought. All Might, Izuku said. The hero looked down at Izuku, and flashed a smile. It's all right, young Midoriya. All Might stated. With All Might supporting him, Izuku felt like nothing could go wrong. He returned All Might's smile. Midoriya, Toshinori, Robin called out, our crew is a wild bunch, you're gonna get left behind if you hang that far back. Oh, I'll come up further then. Izuku stammered, as he began to shuffle upwards nervously. Seeing his pupil walking ahead of him, All Might visualized young Midoriya's future, wondering just how far he would go, and then, trying to catch up to his student, the hero began walking as well. After exploring the wonders of Japan together, Sanji had stocked up on plenty of ingredients. Alongside them, he was also carrying a collection of books which Robin had bought from a bookstore, as the cook had insisted he carry them. Frankie had also restocked plenty of colas, as after seeing the price, he bought enough to last a good few months. Usopp was also interested in many different technologies which were present in Japan, and ended up vowing to one day try and make the first fully functioning TV on the Grand Line. While not looking at anything in specific, Papig was extremely interested in the clothing brands which filled Japan. He was doing so in order to research how he could expand his clothing brand, Criminal. It was popular all around the Blue Sea, yet didn't have much of a market in the 7 continents besides Antarctica, where it was surprisingly profitable. And now, exploring all they wanted to explore, the group had arrived at their destination, the Sabayati Geyser. Alright, just so we're all clear on what we'll be doing once we get to Sabayati, Sanji began, we'll meet up with the others back at the Sunny, assuming there were no complications. There, we'll discuss further plans, but Izuku, Toshinori, Luffy, and Hatchin's group will 100% go out to Sabayati together. Are we clear? In an instant, everyone present said, yes sir. Good. Then let's get ready, Sanji said, clapping his hands together. Turning behind himself, there was a button which was elevated by a bit of iron at same height as his waist. Pressing the button, he assumed it would somehow activate the Sabayati geyser, but, after about half a minute of waiting, nothing had occurred. Say, Papig, does it normally take this long? Yep, just watch. Cutting off Papig, a strong stream of water popped up, as everyone was in awe at the spectacle. It reached high into the air, as water droplets gushed out at every conceivable angle due to the speed of which the geyser had appeared. It formed a beautiful sight which both the heroes and the Straw Hats watched, both mutually in awe of. After reaching its apex, the geyser slowly and magnificently fell, until it settled at a height just slightly taller than the large hole it had come out of. Papig quickly rushed towards the geyser, and jumped on top of it, miraculously not falling through. "What are you all waiting for?" Papig exclaimed, "Jump on. This'll be going down any second now." As quick as they could, the group made their way onto the geyser. Shortly after, the geyser began to make its slow descent. "This certainly is an interesting method of travel," All Might noted, smiling as the geyser continued to sink. "Yep," Papig smiled, overjoyed since he had an opportunity to explain. "As you might already know, most electronic devices don't work on the Grand Line due to its unique magnetic field. So in order to create an elevator to bridge the gap between the 7 continents and the Blue Sea, the folks down on Sabayati came up with a way to repurpose the bubbles the archipelago naturally produces to create an artificial geyser/elevator." "Bubbles?" Robin questioned. "You'll see," Papig responded. "Aw man," Usopp began, "I just can't wait to try and find a way to get a television working on the Grand Line. If I do that, then I'll be Usopp, brave warrior of the TV." Ignoring Usopp, Frankie asked, "So, just when'll we get down to the archipelago?" "Oh, well, that's the bad news," Papig stated. "You see, spit it out," Sanji fiercely stated. "While it only takes about half a minute for the geyser to come up, it'll take about 30 first to get down to the island." Papig revealed nervously. "Oh," Sanji noted, "that's not too bad." "Yeah," chuckled Izuku, "good thing Luffy's not here, otherwise he'd probably be dying of boredom." "You got that right," Sanji added. "I wonder just how he and Nami are doing over with the Sunny. Based on what I've seen from your crew, they're probably just fine." "You needn't worry," All Might added, and Sanji just chuckled in response, adding on a simple, "thanks," at the end. "Oh, wait a minute," Izuku said, pulling out his notebook from his backpack. "I've been meaning to ask you, Sanji, you don't have any powers, right? You mean devil fruit abilities?" "Nope," Sanji said, as his face broke into a cringe, "but there is one I would have liked to have." "So then, could you tell me just how you got so strong, even without a quirk?" Izuku asked. "Oh, easy." The crew conversed on their way down to the archipelago, as Izuku asked many questions about their adventures, to which the crew pretty much recounted all of it to Izuku. They even told him some additional stories coming from before they joined the Straw Hat crew. Before they knew it, they had arrived at the Sabayati archipelago without a hitch, and the geyser group went to meet up with the group that had gone with the Thousand Sunny. Some time later on the archipelago, the group of Izuku, All Might, Luffy, Nami, Chopper, Robin, Brook, Hakken, and Kami had all grouped up together. The group were going to explore the archipelago, as well as get their ship coated. "Some call them world nobles," Hakken explained, "others the celestial dragons. They're so arrogant, they wear helmets to avoid breathing the air of common people. Remember, you mustn't oppose them." Luffy, who was the subject of Hakken's explanation, simply put his hands behind his head, giving a nonchalant, "Sure," before turning his attention over to Izuku. Check end of chapter notes for the meaning of the asterisk. "Hey, Izuku, have you got any super cool hero moves yet?" Luffy asked, his eyes wide with wonder. "Huh, hero moves? Well, I don't have any with my quirk yet, since I just got it," Izuku said through a laugh. Luffy's face broke. "Aw man, what about you? Do you have any new moves you learnt since you were a kid?" Izuku asked. "You know it," Luffy said. "Watch this one. Gum Gum, balloon." Suddenly and without warning, Luffy transformed into a giant balloon. Continuing to walk forwards while blinking, and thus having her eyes shut briefly, Nami walked straight into the back of the Gum Gum balloon, rebounding backwards when she hit Luffy's inflated body. "Watch what you're doing," she shouted after falling onto the ground. "Sorry," Luffy mumbled, "but the coolest ones I've developed so far have gotta be my gears." "Gears? Like in a car?" Izuku asked. "Nope, they're my own special gears," Luffy said, as Izuku excitedly got out his hero notebook, prepared to write down information on Luffy's power. "First one's called second gear. By accelerating my blood flow and heartbeat through my rubber-like body, I make it so that my body can move extra fast and strike extra hard, but at the cost of feeling extra hungry due to consuming a lot of nutri-nets, I think they were called," Luffy explained. "I also can combine that together with a technique I learned from some Navy guys called shave, in order to be able to move even faster." "Shave? What technique is that?" Izuku asked. "It'd be easier if I just show you," Luffy said with a smile. "The principle behind the technique is simple. Kick your feet off the ground as many times as you can in an instant. The stronger you are, and the more times you can kick your feet against the ground, the more effective the technique will be." Luffy then did so, as he vanished from sight, quickly dashing around the group, trying his hardest not to bump into any of them. "Whoa, I can barely even see him," Izuku muttered. "That's just proof that your power hasn't fully manifested within you yet," All Might told Izuku. "Yeah, he's fast, but I can see him just fine currently." Stopping in front of Izuku and All Might by dragging his feet across the ground, Luffy seemingly hadn't been aware of just how strong All Might was up to this point. "Whoa, you could see me while I was using the shave technique, old guy?" Luffy excitedly questioned. "Yep, just one of the benefits of being the #1 hero, I guess," All Might said, flexing as he did so. "But that's just the first transformation. My second is focused on offense, and it's called third gear," Luffy began to explain. "By blowing air into certain parts of my body and bones, I can inflate them like a balloon, like the Gum Gum balloon I showed you earlier. Due to the increased weight of my bones, I can strike my foes even harder than I could with second gear." "Whoa, what's the side effect of that one?" Izuku asked. "Besides being slower while using it, my body begins to deflate after using third gear. Due to that, I become all tiny, and am a lot weaker. I'll be like that until about the same amount of time has passed that I had been using third gear." "Interesting," Izuku noted, finishing up his notes. "Whoa, is that a bubble?" Luffy questioned, quickly rushing towards it. "Yeah, I'm ahead," Luffy shouted, as he was racing Hatchin with a bubble bike that he had recently obtained. "Arg, I won't lose," Hatchin responded. "There's still a ways to go, the finish line is Grove 13. "Haha, go Hatchin go," Papig said from inside Hatchin's bubble alongside Kami. All Might, Brook, and Chopper were merely relaxing over in Luffy's own bubble. Izuku, meanwhile, was in Hatchin's bubble, and was taking notes on every inch of Sabayati. After all, every inch of this place was new and exciting to him. What's going on up ahead?" Izuku questioned, before quickly realizing what it was. What's going on?" All Might saw it up ahead as well. Up ahead, there was a large man, who was threatening a woman with his oversized hands. "Please, let me go. I don't want to die," the woman said. "I've gotta help her," All Might quickly said, but Hatchin intervened. "Don't try to save either of them. You'll only make it worse. That guy's probably a pirate who got caught and sold by human traffickers." Human traffickers. The same thought filled the heads of both Izuku and All Might, who were horrified that such a thing could be seen as a regular occurrence. "I want to break this collar. I've given up on the new world," the large man who was threatening the woman cried, having hair that looked almost as if it was a jester's hat, as well as a coat and pants that screamed, "Pirate." Though, after realizing his time was short, he threw the woman away, wanting to make sure he didn't have any bad karma presently. "I've got a wife and child back home. I want to go back, please. My son was just a baby when I left, he doesn't even know my face." "Is there really nothing we can do?" Izuku contended. "No, his master brought him to this archipelago, and then he must have ran away," Hakan assured. He knows he can't escape from here. If it weren't for... The man paused, as the object he was speaking of began speaking, and his tone turned from one of aggression to depression. This collar. Suddenly, a giant explosion occurred around the man's head, as Izuku and All Might watched on, horrified. "Whoa," Luffy said, surprised by the events that had transpired before him. "Beeps wear collars tied to a chain," Haken quickly explained. "If you break the chain and run, then the collar will explode shortly after." After the remains of the explosion faded away, only the charred body of the former pirate remained. "That's horrible," Luffy stated. Everyone was on the same page. Even despite the explosion, the pirate still attempted to get up. His will to go back to his family alive was the only thing that kept him that way, but even so, he wasn't able to last for long. "Wah!" A runaway beep. A passerby yelled, "Get away! Don't have anything to do with him." Another joined. "Everyone, off your bubble bikes," Hachen commanded, as everyone followed suit. As if to express just how meaningless the life of the beep was, a dog arrived, with a helmet on to ensure that it didn't breathe in the air of common people. It panted, made its way to the half-dead body of the pirate, the one who didn't understand just what being a pirate would mean, nor the dangers that would lie at the gate of the new world, and the dog simply urinated on their dead body. "Is that them?" Luffy asked, looking at the dog. "Get on your knees. Whoever it is, don't make eye contact," Hachen ordered, as everyone decided to follow, at least for now, "and don't touch that pet dog there, it belongs to them. They're right behind it." "Oh," Luffy said, as an intentionally ignorant, jovial, and cruel voice broke through the atmosphere. "Oh dear, father." Another one broke. The first celestial dragon said casually, as if the death of the man right in front of her meant nothing, because to her, it didn't. "Did you give it the sedative every day?" The second asked in a similar tone. "Yes, but he was so stupid that it didn't work. I need a new one." "You're just no good at training them. I dare say, you're breaking through my collection of pirate captains at an alarming rate." The father responded. "This one was just no good," the daughter said, as she walked up to the nearly dead body of the pirate, and in her arrogance and anger, kicked it, a grown man weeping about his family. All Might and Izuku were barely able to keep it together, and to his left, All Might also noticed Luffy's own expression. "He can't even move," the pirate had muttered underneath his breath, a bright hot fury welling up inside of him for a man he had never known. "It makes me sick," the second celestial dragon said, as she shot the body of the pirate, ensuring his death after his swift and painful humiliation. Izuku's body, ignoring the potential consequences, began to move without him thinking. Before he could progress further, however, Hachen stopped him. "Remember your promise," he whispered calmly, also looking upon the celestial dragons with a glance that showed he detested them. Catching wind of this glance, Izuku obeyed, and got back down. They really did kill someone," Izuku said, horrified by the sight that he had just witnessed. All Might, now shocked that he didn't heed Hachen's earlier warning, felt terrible. He had let the teenage Izuku Midoriya, on the very same day he finished his training, a day which should be one of celebration, experience something cruel enough to match his own life's cruelest moments. "I wonder if he actually died," Luffy said, with a serious face. "The Navy took him away. Even if he lived, he's a pirate. He'd be thrown in jail anyways," Hatchman said. "How come nobody can meddle with the celestial dragons? You warned us earlier, Hachen, but why?" Izuku asked. "If you harm a celestial dragon," Papig began, "they'll call in a special navy force with a navy admiral, someone who's just as strong as an emperor of the sea, the kind you seven-continent folks sometimes see on the news." "You mean like Aokiji?" Luffy questioned. Izuku just sat there, horrified. These people, they could do something just as cruel as the worst villains in Japan, and then they were protected by the law. The Straw Hat crew asked more questions, but Izuku tuned them all out. He had made up his mind about something. "Kid," All Might said, addressing Izuku, "I'm sorry you had to see something like this, and I think we should go back up to Japan." Izuku contemplated this momentarily, but he still decided to maintain the previous position he had thought up himself. "No, just because we leave all this behind, that doesn't mean anything. Izuku asserted, on the day we randomly decided to come here, we saw a man die in front of us. Imagine all the days we missed, and all the people we couldn't save. Quote. Kid, All Might said, wishing that such a bombshell wasn't dropped. No, he was wishing that he didn't drop the bombshell on Izuku so early. Though, despite having his eyes open to just how cruel the world was, a certain innocence still remained in Izuku's eyes. His desire to save people was still there, only now, it was stronger than ever. It was backed by the cold, harsh truth of reality and his desire to make it warmer. I want to see more. Izuku said, I want to see just how deep this darkness runs, because I want to change it. After all, if I can't save the people who are right in front of me. All Might looked on at Izuku, and saw that same fire that he saw back on the day he first chose his successor. Then how could I ever call myself a hero? On that day, Izuku Midoriya made a promise to himself, that no matter what, he would save those who were hidden from the reaches of society. He vowed that he would grow stronger, and learn about every part of this world that he could. To save everyone, even those that nobody cared to save, that, to Izuku Midoriya, was what it meant to be a hero. When Luffy and company found their way to Shaki's ripoff bar, the events proceeded mostly as normal. Afterwards, however, Izuku and All Might decided to search for Rayleigh in more lawless lands, being introduced and given a transponder snail from the Straw Hats in the meantime. Nothing extremely interesting happened during their visit to the lawless lands. Izuku and All Might get the news that Fire Fist Ace is to be publicly executed in Marineford before Luffy and his crew do. Luffy informs All Might that they know where Kami is via transponder snail. They decide to vacate the Sabayati archipelago. I still can't believe that Luffy's brother is going to be publicly executed, Izuku repeated, shocked by just what he had read previously. A public execution is quite barbaric, though I can't say I'm surprised considering what we've seen on the archipelago so far. All Might thought aloud, this incident, I wonder if it'll reach Japan. It can't, Izuku cried, I mean, a public execution. There'd be an outrage. The world government operates in strange ways, you never know. While All Might thought with the knowledge of a veteran hero, Izuku acted with the optimistic hope of youth. Both perspectives were the perfect foil to one another, with Izuku's youth giving All Might hope, and All Might's experience helping Izuku stay rational. Whatever the case, we'll just have to see how this unfolds, All Might said, clenching his fist, embarrassed by his new realization of just how powerless he was in the grand scheme of things. Suddenly, the transponder snail which All Might held began ringing, just like a telephone. All Might picked it up, and heard a voice come out of the snail. Hello, hello, an unfamiliar voice stated. Why yes, what do you need? Responded All Might. HMPH, seems you are All Might. You probably don't know who I am, so I ain't gonna bother telling you. The voice alleged with a slight arrogance to his voice, all you need to know is that I'm a vice admiral on the Marines, and since you somehow stumbled your way onto Sabayati, we're gonna request your aid. Izuku was in shock. Somehow, the Marines knew that All Might was here. How? Does that mean that they knew that they had ties to the pirate, Straw Hat Luffy? What did that mean for All Might's hero career? This is all my fault, Izuku thought, his face breaking into a cringe. If I didn't insist on coming to Sabayati, all Izuku's concerns would be put to rest in an instant once All Might simply put his hand up, signifying for Izuku to not intervene. If I may ask, just how did you find out I was here? All Might questioned. Well, I suppose I can tell ya, you're the 7 continents, #1 hero after all. Basically, a trick we Marines use to track people who live on the 7 continents is to hone in on a slowly fading and scrambling electrical signal which'll trigger while they fall down the Sabayati geyser. You must have brought your cell phone with you. The voice explained, and we figured out that you were All Might because we picked up on your signal distorting and matched it with the 7 continents databases before the signal completely vanished. All Might froze, as he realized that he should have been more cautious. Sabayati was hidden to those in Japan, and he should have surmised back then that the world government clearly wanted it hidden for a reason. Since you're the hero of the 7 continents, the government will be forced to go easy on you, but I'm warning you All Might, the price for people originally from the 7 continents going down to Sabayati normally as execution. Those words caused every inch of Izuku's body to freeze. What do you need? All Might swiftly responded, wanting to quickly end this conversation, and save his pupil from any further hardships. Straw Hat Luffy has for an unknown reason punched a celestial dragon. All Might and Izuku's eyes turned to shock, as they both knew that meant that the most powerful forces the Marines had to offer would be coming for their friend, but the worst was yet to come. We've sent an admiral, one of the Navy's strongest forces, to round up my Straw Hat, but they're gonna take a while and men are probably gonna be dying in the process. So, we're gonna need you to stall Straw Hat for as long as you can, as well as any other pirates, for that matter. Izuku wouldn't know what to say, but without a second to lose, All Might responded quickly. Got it. Good luck, All Might, the Vice Admiral said, as the transponder snail clicked off a moment later. Both Izuku and All Might remained silent. As tears began forming in Izuku's eyes, he was overwhelmed by all that had occurred. Seeing Izuku's reaction, All Might flashed Izuku his signature smile. Worry not, young Midoriya. All will be okay, All Might said, as in an instant, a puff of smoke appeared, and gone was the true Toshinori Yagi, and in his place was All Might, the strongest hero in the world, because I am here. Izuku, his eyes wide, wiped away his tears, as those words felt so reassuring in a time where nothing at all made sense to him, and everything he had ever known was turned on his head. Izuku, one for all should be within you now. All Might whispered, get to the geyser, and get out of here. Should you need to use one for all on your escape, simply brace every part of yourself, and excite your own heart until you're able to release all that pent-up energy, from the bottom of your heart, yelling out, smash. Pausing momentarily, but not wanting to slow down his hero, Izuku quietly shouted, okay. I will. But, he remembered Luffy. All Might. Izuku began, as All Might paused momentarily, looking back over his shoulder, you're gonna have to fight Luffy, right? All Might hesitated to respond, but regardless of the time he took, he didn't formulate a lie in the end, and simply said, yes. No tears fell from Izuku's eyes, for he knew that he had to be strong in this moment. Both him and All Might were ready to shatter from an information overload. Thinking of the advice All Might would give him, as well as thinking of the advice that Luffy would give, Izuku readied a response which he had carefully prepared. Good people can do bad things, much like bad people can do good. Izuku began, sometimes, those bad things make someone a villain, and sometimes, those good things can make someone a hero. All Might understood where Izuku was going, but nonetheless, the teen still elaborated. And, regardless of whether or not those definitions are flawed, and regardless of whether or not we'll fix them in the future, those are still the definitions we go by. Izuku continued, right now, Luffy is a villain, and heroes. Izuku choked on the last word, for it was one that even he didn't want to hear, but knew that All Might needed to, for it was the hard truth of the situation. Stop villains, and save people. All Might, understanding the meaning of Izuku's words, simply responded. Thank you for the reminder, kind citizen. Now please, evacuate the area, post-haste. Stay safe, All Might stated, as he pressed his legs into the ground, and went flying off to fight the villain who needed stopping today. Izuku was left behind, air pressure hitting his hair from the incredible force which All Might exerted upon launching himself into the air. Staring at his hero as he flew away, he finally let tears fall from his eyes. Gee, this isn't what I thought being a hero would be like, Izuku cried, for underneath that confidence he showed off earlier, was none other than a scared boy who was exposed to the darkest underbelly of the world far too soon. I'm an utter failure as a teacher. All Might thought, flying above the archipelago and looking back at where he once came, but, I have a job to do now. Looking down, All Might saw what looked to be an extremely large man in a bear hat fighting against a red-haired man and yellow-shirted, polar bear-hatted man, or at least, that's what he assumed, as he was going so fast that everything seemed to be a blur, even with his extraordinary vision, enhanced by One for All. Nonetheless, All Might was given an order to act as a hero, and he knew just where to go. Hey, do you want to go to the amusement park? Luffy said to his crewmates. You shut up. They shouted back at Luffy, but their bickering was interrupted, as from the sky, an extremely large man with golden hair, shaped in a V, arrived. His muscles were so large that they looked to be cartoonishly exaggerated. Due to the ideal which he held in his heart, his text was even written in a different style than everyone else's. He was almost like an American comic book character had come to life. No words were spoken once All Might landed, but Luffy and All Might locked eyes with one another. In Luffy's eyes, All Might saw the same determination that was possessed by his successor, and in All Might's eyes, Luffy saw the same greatness that his old friend would one day possess. There was a silence, and in that, Luffy understood all that he needed to. Don't hold anything back. Suddenly, Luffy used the shave technique, rushing towards All Might in an instant and attacking him with a gum-gum bullet, but All Might effortlessly blocked the attack by grabbing it with his hand. Wait, Nami shouted. Luffy, why are you attacking Toshinori? Ain't it obvious? Zoro said, unsheathing his swords, prepared to join in on Luffy's fight. He's a hero, and we're criminals. Suddenly, arriving beside them would be none other than Bartholomew Kuma. Seems like we've got bigger problems than Toshinori right now, Usopp cried out, as the Straw Hat crew prepared to battle Kuma. Meanwhile, Luffy was engaged in a fight against All Might. The two moved so fast that the land around them shook, with every blow from both parties having only the goal to try to end the fight they were engaged in. Texas, smash, All Might shouted, landing a punch on Luffy. Even despite his rubber body, Luffy still flew backwards from the impact and took minor damage, crashing into tree after tree before regaining his composure and retreating to the ground, sliding against it. Luffy realized that All Might was stronger than him as he was now, but nonetheless, couldn't hurt him as easily. Not bad, Luffy said, smirking. Now, gum, pistol. All Might attempted to dodge Luffy's attack, but to the hero's surprise, it seemed almost as if Luffy had intended for All Might to dodge, as it curved towards the position where he dodged. The attack hit All Might square in the face. His power, he's undoubtedly weaker than me, All Might surmised, but still, there's no doubt that his skills make him a pro in his own right. From this altercation, only one thing was clear to both parties: this fight would not be one that either could win that easily. Meanwhile, on the sidelines, Zoro and Sanji readied to enter the fight against Kuma after Franky had used his coup d'etat. Three-sword style, now serving, both Zoro and Sanji began. Oni, Jiri, Jigot. Sanji kicked Kuma's kneecaps, and Zoro sliced Kuma's chest. The battle seemed over before it even began, as the pirate fell apart. That seemed too easy, Zoro commented, but right after he said that, a red thread seemed to swirl around Kuma, as in an instant, he regenerated all the damage he had taken. What? Great. Just had to jinx us, Mosshead. Sanji shouted. Shut up, crappy cook. Zoro shouted right back. Izuku had nearly made his way back to the Sabayati geyser, but it wasn't exactly an easy journey. Everything on the archipelago was chaotic, and Izuku had to dodge numerous pirates and other criminals causing chaos and battling against marines in order to make any progress forwards. It was an awful sight to behold, but Izuku had to focus on the task at hand, and not let anything get in his way. Almost made it to the geyser, Izuku thought, just a little bit more. Somebody, help. The voice rang through Izuku's ears, as he looked behind himself. A large pirate with green skin was holding a marine by the face. As the pirate did this, a smile appeared on his face, and the few other marines surrounding the pirate were terrified. Put him down, a female marine shouted, pointing her rifle at the pirate. When she did so, the pirate only laughed in response to this. Ya jajaja, fools, do you not know who I am? The pirate stated with a noticeable lisp. I might add, I am the great Tombo of the Flute Pirates, possessing a bounty of 26 million berries. You won't order me around if you know what's good for you. Quote. They're marines. I'm sure they can handle themselves just fine. Izuku thought. Help, please. My, someone's getting impatient. Tombo asserted. How's this then? I'll kill everyone else here, then you can all go to the afterlife together. Before Tombo could continue his assault, a boy with green hair was right in his face, a fist behind himself. No, I can't run here, Izuku thought, a stern look appearing on his face, as a shocked look appeared on his opponents. If I do leave these guys behind, even if they're Marines. Detroit. Smash. Izuku yelled, as he punched Tombo directly in the face. Unable to even get out a single word, Tombo was instantly knocked out and thrown to the ground. A massive crater was left from his impact with the ground, as the Marines surrounding the area were utterly shocked by Izuku's sudden intervention. I could never call myself a hero, Izuku exclaimed in his head, as thanks to the recoil of his own attack, Izuku was propelled upwards and into the air. The gust of wind from his attack also caused the Marine who was previously held captive by Tombo to fly backwards a small amount. Vince, the female Marine shouted, rushing over to Vince, who was lying on the ground. She knelt over to match his height and propped him up with her hands. Are you all right? She asked. Yeah, Vince stated, his voice straining. The female Marine breathed a sigh of relief, and let go of Vince, as he was able to sit up himself. I'm not the one you should be worrying about, though, Vince said, pointing towards Izuku. Oh, right, realizing that she hadn't even thanked the one who saved Vincent yet, as she ran back to him to do so, but only one thing came out of her mouth when she slowed down in order to get a good look at the boy. Your arm, the female Marine noted, as Izuku was breathing heavily on the ground. In order to save the Marine, he had broken not only his right arm, but his right leg as well. It's all right, Izuku stated, wincing as he began to prop himself up with his left arm. There's no way you're all right, not with those injuries. A Marine from the crowd which was around Tombo before stated, going to help Izuku up, but Izuku pushed his arm away with the only non-broken arm he had, struggling to keep balanced on his left leg when he did so. It's all right, Izuku repeated. Come on, don't be so stubborn. The Marine who had helped him previously muttered. Yeah kid, you did good. We'll take you over to the hospital now, the female Marine stated. No, it's all right, Izuku repeated once more, now standing on his one leg and beginning to limp away. He knew that One for All had done a number on his body, but even so, he couldn't accept help, not just yet. He had to get back to Japan. The female Marine put her hand on the boy's arm. Kid, let the boy go, he clearly has somewhere he needs to be. Turning around, the one who had been grabbed by the pirate earlier stood there, a stern expression on his face. Lieutenant Vince, the female Marine called. The moment later, the lieutenant bowed to Izuku. Thank you for saving us. We're the Marines, and meant to stand for justice, so it's embarrassing you had to step in. The lieutenant shouted at Izuku, but still, we'll never forget the fact that you're the only reason we're alive. We will become better, thank you. A brief moment of silence ensued after the lieutenant finished his speech. The atmosphere was tense, as the group of Marines were unsure of how to respond to what Vince had just said. Responding in his own way, Izuku merely flashed an innocent yet pained smile. Don't mention it. Facing towards the Sabayati geyser once more, Izuku began to limp away. Having leapt into action without thinking, he had gotten a taste of his power, a taste that seemed to have been wished in from a monkey's paw. Despite the overwhelming pain he was in, Izuku trekked on with determination, and only one thought crossed his mind. I'm sorry All Might, I couldn't even stay safe like you wanted. Back with Luffy and All Might, their fight continued to rage on, the match barely progressing from the previous instant. Gum gum, Gatling, Luffy shouted, as All Might countered with his own flurry of blows. I'm not gonna get anywhere like this, All Might thought, as he knew that due to his injury, he'd be losing stamina faster than Luffy was. Realizing his predicament, All Might then jumped backwards. Luffy stopped his gum-gum Gatling, and analyzed what All Might was doing. All Might crossed his arms into an X shape across his body, and then began running at Luffy. Carolina, smash, All Might shouted, throwing his crossed arms outwards to attack Luffy. Due to the long startup of the attack however, Luffy was able to swiftly counter All Might's blow, bending his upper body to dodge as he extended his head outwards, shouting out. Gum gum, Bell. Luffy's head quickly launched into All Might's chest, causing the hero to cough up blood, but that was the least of All Might's worries at the moment. I still haven't even fully recovered from that time spent giving young Midoriya my quirk, and that time spent hiding my true form from these folks. All Might noted, I don't have much time left. I have to fight with all my strengths now, and I have to win. Suddenly, All Might accelerated at faster speeds than ever before. This swift movement surprised Luffy, and left him not enough time to dodge All Might's unnamed punch attack, being sent flying backwards as a consequence. With a quick bit of creativity, Luffy used this to his advantage, grabbing onto some nearby trees as he was flying back. Now for a counter-attack, Gum Gum, Rocket. Luffy yelled this out as he rebounded off of the trees, shooting his way back to All Might. The hero in question was shocked by Luffy's swift return, but he had to do something to try and counter-attack. Detroit, Gum Gum, Smash, Bazooka. Thanks to the powers of his extending arms, Luffy was able to hit All Might directly in the chest without the hero's blow even reaching the pirate. With a heavy impact, All Might was shot onto the ground below, dragging across it as he fell backwards and moved a noticeable distance. The entire surrounding area shook from the impact, an event which would have been notable if not for the fact that the rest of the Straw Hat crew were fighting someone who was even stronger than All Might was, that being the Pacifista, PX4. Luffy, respecting All Might's dedication to being a hero, walked up to him. You really pushed yourself back there, but you should know that shave's a technique which most people have gotta train before using, Luffy calmly told All Might, and trying to utilize the principles of my second gear to push your own power beyond your limits, all that was doing was draining your stamina for a minimal boost in power. I know, All Might admitted, slowly reverting back to his true form, with steam pouring out from his body. I also knew that I couldn't beat you, but as Japan's #1 hero, it was my responsibility to do everything I could to stop a villain like you. Luffy was silent for a moment, giving himself time to process this, and All Might time to follow up. I couldn't even force you to use your gears, All Might said through a tearful chuckle. There was yet another pause, in which after, Luffy took it upon himself to speak. Someday in the future, we'll meet again. Before that day comes, I'll get a lot stronger, and I want you to be strong as well. Luffy spoke, because if that happens, then we won't have to fight again. Luffy walked away from All Might, crouching and putting his hand on the ground afterwards. Entering into second gear, he was now ready to face off against a foe his friends were struggling against, only serving as a further reminder to All Might that in the grand scheme of things, he was weak. Ha! Some #1 hero I am, All Might said, with a slight smile on his face. Young Midoriya, I'm sorry. All Might drifted into the realm of unconsciousness, and as he did, many things changed. For one, the Straw Hat crew, through the powers of Bartholomew Kuma, were scattered across the globe after experiencing true hopelessness for the first time, some in different locations than the original story. Despite this, most events would happen just as they did originally, albeit with minor differences, but soon enough, those differences would stop being so minor, but that's for the future. As for now, what happened to All Might? All Might awoke in a dark room somewhere within the Sabayati archipelago, still injured from his last battle, but he was in a stable state. Together with him was none other than Kizaru, an admiral of the Marines, sitting adjacent to him. Ah, hello, All Might drowsily said. You've caused us quite a bit of trouble by coming down here, All Might. Kizaru declared, lots and lots of paperwork has been added to my desk, just what motivated you to come down here anyways? All Might paused, thinking about what to say. He couldn't just tell them about his involvement with the Straw Hat Pirates, besides the fact that it meant he had associated with criminals, it would also endanger his student. So, even though All Might didn't like to lie, he did so with a purpose, which made the act all the more bearable. I came down here because I heard about it from several passers-by. All Might stated, with my abilities, you tend to hear a lot of rumors and gossip, but after enough time, I decided to investigate into the Sabayati archipelago, going to a geyser of sorts, and descending down here. A short pause was contained between All Might finishing his answer and Kizaru's next question, as the Marine took his time to decide what the perfect angle to attack was. I take it that you don't like how we do things around here? Kizaru asked, but All Might remained silent. It's okay if you don't, most people who come from Japan tend to not. After sighing, All Might decided to answer Kizaru's question. Of course I don't. Well, that's okay. You people from outside the Grand Line have your ways, and we inside it have ours. Kizaru stated, with a sort of casual tone that All Might couldn't believe, but, I'm gonna have to ask you to keep your mouth shut about everything that happened down here, and about the Grand Line in general, K. Of course, I never had any intention of revealing such information to anyone. All Might stated with barely a hint of honesty, but Kizaru couldn't tell such from his conviction. Alright then, we're good then. Oh yeah, one more thing, I've been ordered by the higher-ups to tell you that we're gonna have to establish some ground rules to ensure you don't talk. Finishing his statement, Kizaru then showed All Might a picture, and suddenly, his eyes grew wide in shock, as the picture was of none other than Izuku Midoriya. This is the inheritor to your quirk, one for all, right? How do you? The Navy has their ways, All Might. Kizaru slyly responded, now, here's the deal. You're gonna keep your mouth shut about this whole fiasco. Don't say a word, and well, then your friend here will be just fine. All Might stared straight at the ground. This is a man who was from the government he had never questioned for years. He thought that the world government was ensuring the safety of everyone in the world by hiding the details behind the pirate-infested Grand Line, but now, he saw that couldn't be further from the truth. The only people they were keeping safe were scumbags, criminals, and those that benefited them and their cause. You're free to go now. Kizaru stated, pointing to the door behind him. I trust you know your way out. All Might got up, and began to walk to the door. He wondered if young Midoriya made it up the geyser all right, but, in order to confirm something else, he had to ask one more question. That Straw Hat boy I was fighting against, what ended up happening to him? Oh, you're curious about Straw Hat? Kizaru said, curious. Yes, he defeated me quite easily, so I was wondering if you all were able to defeat him all right. All Might clarified. Kizaru just scoffed at this. Don't underestimate us Marines, All Might. We're hundreds of times stronger than you could ever be. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.